Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Another busy day for wildfire crews across our province. Officials in the Okanagan say they are making progress on the blazes near them. More of them are being held and evacuations orders are being rescinded as the weather cooperates. And Kelowna Airport is expected to reopen by the weekend.
In the Shuswap, firefighting continues, as does some concern about access to homes amid a protest at an RCMP checkpoint. We're going to check into that and take your calls and emails. I'm Dan Burritt alongside Belle, Puri. Welcome to an extended version of BC Today. The BC Wildfire Service pulled some resources off of the fires burning in the North Shuswap yesterday, this because of safety concerns flagged by the RCMP. A group calling itself the Convoy of Truth and Freedom posted on social media yesterday they would try to dismantle a RCMP roadblock along Highway 1. To tell us more, we've reached the CBC's Doug Herbert in Kamloops. Doug, before we get to that blockade, why don't we start with the latest on the wildfires themselves there? What's the latest you're hearing?
Well, the BC Wildfire Service, Dan, says crews have been focusing on the Little Shuswap Lake area and Turtle Valley this morning. That Bush Creek East fire has remained relatively stable over the past 2 days, but it is hard to tell just how big it's grown as the smoke has been limiting the fire service's ability to map it. As of the last data it was mapped on the 20th, it was at 410 square kilometers. Now, as you've heard, that fire began beside Adams Lake. Then it's grown to cover a wide swath of the North Shuswap, Little Shuswap Lake, Adams Lake. It also jumped the Little River and Highway 1 back on Friday and grew quickly towards Sorrento. Now, there are numerous evacuation orders and alerts still in place. The Wildfire Services says the RCMP and the Columbia Shuswap Regional District will help them determine operational activities throughout the rest of today, tomorrow, and going forward. And as you mentioned, this all pertains to plans for fighting the fire in the North Shuswap, where they pulled resources from yesterday, all in relation to this protest on Highway 1.
And let's talk about that, Doug. What is the latest on that part of the story?
Well, as you've been hearing this week, there is a bit of a divide with folks who stayed behind to fight the fires in the North Shuswap communities like Scotch and Lee Creek, all calling for supplies. Those haven't been getting through because the RCMP have been turning them away both on the water on Shuswap Lake as well as at blockades on Highway 1. That highway is still closed from Chase to west of Tappan, which effectively blocks easy access to the North Shuswap. As you heard earlier, this so-called Convoy of Truth and Freedom let it be known yesterday they would attempt to dismantle a blockade. A number of trucks, some with supplies, along with at least a dozen people arrived at that blockade last night. There were heated words with officers at the highway stop. We tried to explain to people it just wasn't safe to go into the fire zone, and until a permit was approved, access to that area would be denied. Now, a video of that incident has been circulating on social media, with those officers hearing a lot of anger from folks involved in that convoy of truth and freedom, as it was called.
And Doug, do we have an update on what police have said about this incident today?
Yes, we did get a message, an email from Corporal James Grandy. He said Chase RCMP had been alerted to the plans to dismantle this barricade, with this group planning to overwhelm it. He says extra officers have been brought in as there have been efforts by some people to undermine the BC Wildfire Service's suppression work through the movement of vital equipment. He goes on to say emergency personnel's safety has been compromised by threats of violence. Despite all of this, he says the incident at that blockade was resolved safely without violence. He says he sympathizes with people in the North Shuswap, but he notes there is a process in place through the Emergency Operations Center to gain access that ensures people going into the new North Shuswap and those already there remain safe.
So that's the RCMP. What are you hearing from BC Wildfire Service?
Well, Forrest Tower with the Wildfire Service spoke with us earlier this morning. He says due to the safety concerns raised by the RCMP while this incident was going on the highway, the BC Wildfire Service was pulling some resources from the North Shuswap. The Wildfire Service sent out a message on social media last night about this incident, but it was deleted soon afterwards. Forrest says they deleted the tweet because RCMP said the threats were over. He says there have been some interactions with what he referred to as outside people that raised concerns, and he was expecting a further update from police today on those safety worries.
And beyond the update, then, what any indication of what's going to happen next on either side of this disagreement?
Well, it's all kind of a very moving target, as they say. It's all in flux, but what we had heard from the Wildfire Service is that they are making efforts to work with those defying orders to fight the fires in the North Shuswap. Anyone who is staying behind is asked to alert the fire service where they are so crews can arrange to work with them. As far as getting those supplies into the North Shuswap, I get the sense a supply truck could get through soon, provided the Columbia Shuswap Regional District grants the appropriate permits. I understand there was a truck set to go through yesterday with supplies, but then this convoy group arrived at the barricade on the highway, so it was turned away out of safety concerns. So, as I mentioned, that situation still very much in flux.
And Doug, lastly, we appreciate your time. Like many of our reporters and producers and others, you've been hearing a lot from the public. Can you give us a general sense of maybe the frustration on either side?
Well, the folks in the North Shuswap are frustrated because they want to put the fires out. They feel like they weren't supported in the early days. They don't entirely trust what the Wildfire Service is telling them about resources, the number of people going in to help out, and they just want to continue fighting those fires themselves. They want more support, obviously, from the Wildfire Service, but they also want these supplies to come in so they can stay. As far as the Wildfire Service goes, well, they want to work with these people. They want to keep the area safe, but it's just a matter of trying to connect so that everybody feels like they're being heard and everybody is getting what they want in this situation. So hard situation, lots of frustration. And of course, then there's the other folks in the North Shuswap who left, who are sitting there watching this from afar, and they say, I can't believe a convoy would come. And there would be people so angry at the RCMP, and they're sort of embarrassed about what's going on there in the North Shuswap. They just want to go home. They want their houses safe. So it's a hard one. There's a lot of sides involved. Obviously, everybody wants to stay safe. It's just how do we get there so that everybody is happy?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. And I know, Doug, you'll keep an eye on things. That's Doug Herbert. He is our morning CBC newscaster in Kamloops. Now, there are changes coming in the weather forecast, so let's find out more about those and how those will impact the wildfire and smoke situations across BC. Darius Madavi is our CBC News climate and science specialist. Good afternoon to you again, Darius.
Hello.
Let's start with the weather outlook. Perhaps not everything that we want to see right now.
No, not exactly. We are seeing temperatures come up. We have a new high pressure system setting up, replacing that low that passed through the province, and that's going to bring temperatures up high and dry things out across the province. It should also mean some more settled weather in the coming days. For now, there are a couple places where we're seeing some gusty winds just as that system sets up. So, for instance, in Kelowna, we're forecasted to get some winds that are sustained at around 30 kilometers per hour, gusting to 50 kilometers per hour in the valley. But further up in higher elevations, the winds are much calmer, closer to 15, 20 kilometers per hour. So not necessarily bad news, depending on where exactly we're looking at, but other places like the Shuswap also seeing very calm winds. Just little places we're seeing some more gusty conditions pop up. Those high temperatures could be a problem because we're going to see some more fuels dry out. We're going to see more dry conditions. The humidity is coming down as well. So heading into the weekend, we're going to see temperatures come up to seasonal and then past those. So by Monday, we'll be reaching temperatures anywhere from 3 to 7 degrees above seasonal, pretty much across the province. Here in Vancouver, we're going to be seeing temperatures not go quite that high. We're going to see a few degrees above seasonal, probably mid to high 20s. But in places like Kelowna, we're going to pass 30 again, well above 30. Places like Kamloops, again, also well above 30. So definitely something to keep an eye out for in the next coming days.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, sorry, Dan,
go ahead.
we talked about rain, and there were concerns that, it can be good, it can be bad. So what materialized there?
We did see quite a lot of rain happen in the South Peace and then carry through into Alberta. I think the bulk of the rainfall did end up landing in Alberta. We did definitely see some very substantial rainfall through the northern part of BC, but I think the parts that were hardest hit were, for the most part, in Alberta, but definitely something to also keep an eye on, because we could still see those floods develop as those rains, the rainfall sort of carries through. I think those rains are pretty much wrapped up now, maybe a few isolated showers popping up through parts of the province, but for the most part, we're going to be looking dry for a while yet.
And let's look at the smoke situation for anybody here in Metro Vancouver and the South Coast. If you saw the sun today, it was back to that blood orange. So the smoke is moving in again. What are we expecting? How long it's going to linger? What's the story?
That is difficult to say. It's going to be smoky through the weekend, at least. Expect smoky skies. For the most part, the smoke should stay aloft. We would expect, because what's drawing in the smoke is high pressure in the interior and over land, even over Vancouver, but off the coast, we're seeing a low pressure system high up in the atmosphere. So all the smoke that's being drawn over will mostly be confined to the upper layers of the atmosphere. So it'll mostly be smoky skies and less so air quality issues on the ground. There will be times when the smoke starts to settle down here, but for the most part, expect gloomy skies, but air quality should remain okay here. Through other parts of the province, it will get very smoky, as a lot of that smoke is trapped in place by the high pressure.
Absolutely could smell it this morning. It was different than yesterday. I know that long-term forecasts are challenging, but is there a glimmer of hope?
Yes, small glimmer.
We like that. We'll take it.
Challenging, but something to latch on to a little bit. We are seeing that we could see another system set up through the province heading into next week, probably midweek. I think overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we could see some pretty substantial rainfall through the southern half of the province. We're talking around 10 millimeters. Again, very far out, hard to forecast a week out, but it will see at least some rain through parts of the province. I looked for Vancouver, Kelowna, Kamloops, a lot of the places where we're seeing these big fires that we're really worried about, and all of them are forecasted to, or not Vancouver, but just because I'm interested in where I am, a little bit selfishly.
We won't hold that against you.
Thank you. We are expected to see some pretty good rainfall into next week as the high pressure system moves out and we see a low pressure system move in. Hopefully that's not going to come with the same winds that we saw. This is not going to be a dry cold front like we saw last week that really let those fires take off. This looks like it's bringing some moisture with it as well.
Okay. Darius Mahdavi, our CBC News and Climate Science Specialist. We really appreciate your time. We've mucked around with your schedule a lot this week, so we really appreciate it. And we may come back to you, so there we are. Just before we get to an update from the Central Okanagan Regional District, we have a call on the line, and we encourage those calls. Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, it's 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be pulled over or hands-free. You've heard my missive all week. And you can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca, and we do appreciate all the calls and emails. Gully is joining us from Vancouver. Gully, thanks for joining us. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to, in knock-on fashion, append something to the item about the Truth and Freedom convoy, or the fledgling movement by the same name. I'm getting some calls as a former logger and a surveyor in that neck of the woods. I'm 76 now, but still in touch with some of the bushmen, so-called, up there. And they're advising me that there's not a complete solidarity with the movement, and that they're more interested in guerrilla deliveries off the beaten track, quite literally through the woods and by circuitous routes, and there's going to be more emphasis on delivery of foodstuffs and fuel via those routes rather than confronting the RCMP, who, after all, most people know are just doing the government's bidding. They're doing their job. So there'll be no need for much more in the way of reinforcements, I have to think, because I'm led to believe the tack is going to change in terms of what I believe and they believe to be necessary deliveries to those that are quite capable with their bush knowledge and their previous training in those industries to defend and protect their own homes and property.
Gully, can I ask you, as an ex-logger,
Yes.
what do you make of those who've chosen to stay behind? And as we've said, some of you go ahead.
If they're not dilettantes, and for the most part they are not. These are people that are, as has been expressed by a number of your callers or correspondents, they are well trained. They're certainly well motivated. They're prudent, but they're being bold or brave. They're the last line of defense. The system we have in place is a broken one. Well, it's not broken. It was never replete, but decidedly deplete given the situation we have with the myriad fires. This is the only way to, it's called local knowledge, and this is the only way to really combat. Now, I suggest the government, and that's also been suggested by your correspondents and your commentators, that these programs be enhanced, enriched, and supported by various levels of government. But it's really those boots on the ground that know where they're going and whereof they speak that are capable at this point. Otherwise, it's a failed attempt, despite the brave hearts that are in harness or in uniform. So I have nothing but respect and praise for those who are defending their own premises, not those that are up there, at a holiday camp. That too is unfortunate, losing those facilities, or cottages, seasonal cottages, also unfortunate. But people's homes and livelihoods and their livestock and so on.
Well, we appreciate your call. Thank you for sharing your perspective, Gully.
Sure, you bet. Thank you.
We're hearing that the province is focusing today on private conversations with community members in the North Shuswap as they try and lower the temperature and find ways to address some of the issues around blockades and contributing to wildfire efforts. Officials in the central Okanagan gave an update today. West Kelowna Fire Chief Jason Brolin shared several updates and is asking for the public's help when it comes to reporting smoke and flames.
The evacuation order rescinds are continuing. There'll be more to come today and more in the future days. The weather right now is in our favor, although we're always anticipating that may change. There are so many people who are working on this. It's not just emergency services anymore. The recovery component of this incident is growing by the moment. But we will get the job done on the ground. BC Wildfire Service is working hard at that along with us, and also they're working hard from the air as well. I want to make it clear, though, we still are firefighting in many of these neighborhoods. We're chasing down hotspots. We're dealing with smoke and what could potentially be flames and even larger issues. And along those notes, I want to reiterate what Brad Litke had said earlier, that there is a burn-off operation, at least one, maybe more, that will be taking place when conditions allow. I suspect that one may have already commenced, and it's going to be visible. People are going to see it, and they're going to think that things are getting worse again, and they're not. As Brad Litke mentioned, it's actually part of making things better. Alongside that operation, I want to assure the public that not only are the BC Wildfire Service experts involved in designing and executing it, but we have one of the largest structural fire departments in the country assembled in the base of that neighborhood, ready to protect the homes and deploy as required. I'm not expecting to have to use it, but we have this tremendous force at our disposal, and they're standing by. Getting this work done is critical to getting people home and beginning to wind this incident up. So don't be scared, don't be worried when you see the smoke. See it as a sign of really expert people doing good work to get you home. I'm going to repeat my ask from yesterday about calls to 911. If you see smoke, or a glow or small flames within the fire area, within the perimeter of the fire, we know about those. We have aircraft in the air, we have people on the ground patrolling. We don't need those reported to 911. What we do need reported to 911 is any smoke or fire outside of the fire perimeter or a large amount of smoke and fire that is unexpected. Those are indicators that we need to get on those things. So please balance those calls and only be making them when they're necessary. So a very common question that we're all getting is, when is my neighborhood going home? I don't have a crystal ball to tell you that, although I can repeat some of the factors that I mentioned yesterday that go into making these decisions. First and foremost, the neighborhood that you're returning to needs to be safe. The fire needs to be out. We need to have addressed debris and hazards. The neighborhood needs to be protected with either mop-up and extinguishment completed and perhaps even a fire guard in place. We need to make sure it's secure and that you have a travel route to get in and out of your neighborhood. We're also looking at utilities and making sure that there's water sufficient enough in the fire hydrants to fight a house fire in that neighborhood that may be completely unrelated to the incident. We need to address the risk and make sure there's no chance of things getting worse, because I don't want to have to evacuate anyone a second time. And finally, we need to look at impact to our operations. We can't have neighborhoods in place when we're still looking at doing these burn-off operations. It just is not conducive to that. We have lots of equipment on the ground and we need the space to do it. So all of those factors go into that. Primarily across my jurisdiction at this point, there's two main reasons why we're continuing to keep people out of their homes. The first is because there's still fire in your neighborhood and or significant damage from fire in your neighborhood. And the second reason is that there is the risk still of fire. And we're still not wanting to put you back in because we don't want to make it worse with you in there. The weather is going to drive those factors.
That was West Kelowna Fire Chief Jason Brolin. And we are expecting an update from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District later this afternoon. That'll be at 2 p.m. We'll bring that to you live, and that will build off what we heard from Doug Herbert in Kamloops, as well as perhaps get an update on the situation around the tensions at that RCMP roadblock.
To recap, we saw a confrontation between some people and Mounties at a police roadblock near the North Shuswap. The RCMP says it believes the people who were trying to break through the checkpoint yesterday were not from that community. So we'll have more on the wildfires across our province, and we'll take your emails and calls after a news break.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. I'm Michelle Morton. Police have confirmed no one was arrested during last night's confrontation at a wildfire checkpoint in the Sorrento area. Tensions continue to run high in the North Shuswap as people try to make supply lines to evacuation zones and keep getting turned away. Messages shared on social media indicated protesters plan to dismantle the checkpoint along Highway 1 near Blind Bay. Corporal James Grandy with the Southeast District RCMP says officers on site were able to de-escalate the situation with no charges anticipated. The Kelowna International Airport says some daytime flights will resume today. Airport authorities say airspace restrictions in place since August 18th have been reduced, but flight schedules will depend on the airline and technology of each individual aircraft. Flights could still be disrupted by BC Wildfire Service operations. And on Vancouver Island, Highway 4 will be closed until 9 tonight, so crews can finish clearing away boulders at the Cameron Lake Bluffs. This is the second of 2 full-day closures, so crews can remove approximately a dozen refrigerator-sized boulders as part of the rock scaling work being done at Angel Rock. The Transportation Ministry says this is the most challenging segment of the bluff. Now a look at the local weather. Sunshine today and hazy, highs of 21 degrees, except 26 if you're inland. A few clouds for tonight with local smoke cooling down to 15, and tomorrow widespread smoke, highs of 23, except 28 inland. Now back to BC Today with Dan Burritt and Belle Puri.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Our phone lines are open, and we want to hear from you. Tell us how the wildfires are impacting you in your community. And so many of you are contacting us about the tensions and the protests. In a few minutes, we'll hear what BC RCMP are saying, and we want to hear your thoughts too, so you can call us at 1-800-825-5950. Locally, 604-669-3733. Pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.
It is hoped the impact of the wildfires on BC businesses can be measured with a new survey. It's been created by the BC Economic Development Association. That group's president and CEO is Dale Wielden. He spoke with Gloria Makarenko on CBC's The Early Edition today. She began by asking Dale what information they hope to get from that survey.
We're hoping to gather some basic information, obviously, on the locations of the businesses. I mean, we've had fires spreading throughout British Columbia since April. So, there's a lot of businesses that have been impacted. We want to know sort of what some of those direct impacts have been, what some of the indirect impacts are, right from, losing broadband, from losing structures, from losing customers, losing business. We want to know the estimated financial impacts and, of course, the job impacts as well.
So what are your members telling you so far about how they have been impacted by the wildfires?
Well, over 80% so far. These are businesses throughout the province. 80% of the businesses so far have indicated that they have been directly impacted with financial impacts, loss of business. The biggest impacts appear to have been coming in the last couple of weeks, of course, since some of the fires in the larger centers like West Kelowna and Kelowna and the Shuswap, and Kamloops area. So there's some of those impacts that are coming in. The majority of the responses so far are from the Okanagan region, the Thompson-Okanagan region of the province, and I suspect that that number will pretty much stay the same as people answer the survey. We are working with other associations to get the survey out to their businesses, to their members. And hopefully over the next week or so, we'll get more information.
Are there some sectors that are feeling the impact more than others?
Tourism and hospitality for sure, food services and accommodations for sure are feeling or sort of indicating the largest impact. We're hearing from breweries, from wineries, from hotels, from those tourism, entertainment, or the recreation type of businesses that are really concerned about the impacts of the fires that they've experienced this year, the impact of the travel ban, of the short travel ban, but that short travel ban canceled a lot of events that were going to take place over the next few weeks. And then, of course, combining that loss of so important income at the end of our summer, combined with having to pay back the CBC loans at the end of December, is going to be a double impact for them.
I see. Okay. Probably not surprising, as you say. If you work in the tourism industry and the tourists can't come to you because of the wildfires, that makes a whole lot of sense. It's going to affect your bottom line, and this is tourist season after all. But what kinds of supports are your members looking for from government right now?
Financial supports, absolutely, and a delay of the repayment of the CBC loans. Many of these businesses, especially in the tourism hospitality industry, did take out CBC loans. It's going to impact breweries and wineries and some of these smaller restaurants and businesses that have taken out these loans. Their ability to pay them back is, it's almost a break. A bankruptcy almost point that some of these businesses will be in. So financial support is definitely, some marketing support, telling people that, the areas are open. If I look outside today, Gloria, it is beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful day here in the Okanagan. There's lots to do. There's lakes, all over the place to enjoy, and we need people to come back. We need people to come back to all of these areas when they can, and of course in a safe way. But we need to get marketing out there as to what's open and what's not.
Well, and what about what is within the control of the businesses themselves? I know some of the questions on your survey, they look at things like the preparations. Maybe it's backing up your files. Maybe it's making sure the insurance coverage is complete. Are there steps you think businesses need to be taking themselves to prepare for wildfires?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually something that our association has been talking about for a number of years, working with uh, we've worked with communities across North America, frankly, and we do a lot of training on how do we get communities better prepared uh, to deal with the economic impacts that disasters bring. We don't find that many communities actually look at the economic impacts and how are they going to address those impacts should a disaster happen. We're always, and rightfully so, we're very well prepared to evacuate citizens and get them back safely, get them out safely, protect property, and that has to be the first priority. But we need to also look at how do we prepare our communities, and part of that community is the businesses themselves. And how do the businesses prepare? Are their business continuity plans up to date? Do they have the information available to them of what they're going to do in the time of crisis? And there's a lot of tools out there that can be used to develop these plans. And again, I think it goes back to, and there's some of those questions that we do ask is what businesses have it. We've been to disasters in BC, where we've come into businesses and they didn't know they could get insurance on certain things. So there's some obligation on the part of working with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, who've been a fantastic partner of ours, finding out what type of insurance you should be getting, how to ask for that insurance. Can you get flood insurance or can you not get flood insurance? Can you get fire insurance, not fire insurance? Those types of things that need to be better explained, even at the local level, to the businesses that are in the community.
Dale, where can listeners find your survey?
They can actually go to our website at BCEDA, so British Columbia Economic Development Association, /wildfires.php, and that will take them to a list of resources. We have a live document going that we started back in April. We do this at every disaster, and it has all of the up-to-date information on support, and then also on that page is a link to the wildfire survey.
Dale Wielden, the president and CEO of the British Columbia Economic Development Association. Again, that group's website, if you want to take part, bceda.ca, and you'll find the survey there.
Now, protesters have tried to bypass an RCMP blockade on the Trans-Canada Highway in the Shuswap region. It comes as tensions continue and the refusal of some residents to obey wildfire evacuation orders. Corporal James Grandy from the BC RCMP spoke to CBC News. He says no arrests were made and described the scene.
So yesterday evening, a group of people kind of in a bit of a convoy kind of situation had attended the North Shuswap, one of the checkpoints there that was being manned by RCMP as a point where they weren't allowed to enter at that point as part of the evacuation zone. And that group spoke with the RCMP there and were upset, I suppose, with not being able to deliver food and other maybe necessities to people beyond that line. Our officers and other departments that are working to keep everybody safe and kind of resolve this issue safely, we understand the frustration of people. We're all frustrated with everything. We're all trying to do our best to protect property and people's lives in this situation. And so it is frustrating when we have certain people who want to engage with us during this really crucial time in a manner that's just not helpful.
We're listening to BC RCMP spokesperson Corporal James Grandy. Now, he also says he believes that some of the participants in last night's protest were not from the local area. He also defended the police presence around areas under evacuation orders.
We're enforcing the law. We're making sure that people are not stuck behind, that are going to be in a situation where they're going to be put in harm's way. And people are free to leave their property, leave the area. We'll help them do that. But it is not prudent for us to be allowing people into that area if it's going to put themselves, the wild fighting and firefighting crews, at risk. And so, yeah, that's our main priority, is keeping everybody safe, and also the properties that are beyond those evacuation zones, inside of those evacuation zones, safe as well. And that's why, we had that checkpoint. We can't have anybody, and some people who are not even local residents, coming and going within that area. We don't know what their intentions may be, and in addition to that, it's just clearly just not safe.
That's Corporal James Grandy from the BC RCMP. Now, we have a caller from Port Alberni. Roman is on the line. What are your thoughts this afternoon, Roman?
Well, I'm glad I get to speak right after that clip was played, because I think one of the biggest things I'm going to do here is be a devil's advocate, because I feel I need to be, and ask the question of why are such soft kid handling sort of ways and means measures being put towards this, which is obviously a huge safety, security, and other levels of concern, where the protesters who call themselves Truth and Freedom, as you said, may not even be from the area, may not even have a vested interest in any such safety or other measures. They're coming basically as an outside threat. The state of BC is under a state of emergency, yet they're attending to a site. And again, as a First Nations person, as an Indigenous person, I take really strong offense at how different the characterizations are between strangers coming in and attending to a site where they are not welcome, don't belong, and imposing their beliefs, their whatever on that area, in the sake forsaking the local integrity of the demographic, of the spirit of the land, and everything all in one. For what? What are they really protesting? Is it an abstract concept only they understand? I really don't get the disparity between how certain groups are given preferential treatment over others. I'm going to call it for what it is. You're not blockading, you're not protesting, you're attending to a site. How is that even possible? Because that shapes the response and the actions of those that are in authority to make sure peace and other things are kept in line. Whereas I've seen so many horror stories of our people, even elders, being rough-handled, being thrown on the ground, being handcuffed, being treated as less than this and less than human. I just want to know how and why.
You raise a very good question, Roman. I don't think it's something that overall that Belle and I can answer, but you raise a very good point. Can I ask what you think it is? Do you think it's racism?
I think it has to be the systemic aspect and the latency of systemic racism, because even if you don't understand the words and understand the direct measures of what systemic racism is, you have innate and intuitive actions and acts that you behave on. Your conditioned behavior is driven by something, nature versus nurture. So we grew up understanding certain things all the way back from elementary school. I've been less than because I am Native. Robbie Robertson on that documentary Rumble, the Indians that rocked the world, said it very clearly. He said, be proud of who you are. Just be careful who you tell. And that about says it all for me.
Roman, we appreciate your call. Thank you very much in providing some perspective on a very difficult situation for a lot of people right now. We do appreciate it. Our phone lines are open, and we do want to hear from more of you. Tell us how the wildfires are impacting you and your community. And so many of you have been contacting us about the tensions, the protests, and just how you're doing. In a few minutes, you'll hear what the you just heard what the BCRCMP are saying. We want to hear from you as well. 1-800-825-5950 is our number across BC. In Metro Vancouver, the best number is 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. In the Shuswap, as we've been hearing, a lot of opinions about BC's wildfire fighting strategy. Some support it, others not so much. Now, the Bush Creek East wildfire is estimated at 410 square kilometers, described as one of the fastest moving, most aggressive fires in the province's history. Thousands of people have been ordered to flee, though some have decided not to leave. They've taken the fight into their own hands. That's the case in Celista, in the small subdivision of Kates Cove. Lyndon Kendrick has lived there since 2007 and joins us on the line. Lyndon, thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Why have you and some of your neighbors decided to stay and not evacuate?
Well, our subdivision of Kate's Cove recently installed over $320,000 of fire suppression equipment. We've got tanks that hold 30,000 gallons of water. There's a certified fire hydrant here that the local fire department has access to. And we've extensively protected all of the properties with hydrants available for each property owner. So we've got quite a bit of infrastructure that we've put in place and invested in. And if we're not here to maintain and man it and use it, it was all for nothing. Like we kind of planned for not obviously something of this scale, but we put a lot of time and money and thought into being able to defend these properties. And we just would like the ability to be able to do that.
And why is it, you said that the residents 100% paid for this system? There are no resources for that sort of support for your subdivision, that you had to pay for it yourself?
Yeah, we're in a strata, and it's a privately owned strata, and there is no services of that nature provided by the government or the regional district or anything. It was upon us to do that.
Okay, so tell us now, where are you in relation to the fire?
There's fire all over here. Friday obviously was the big firestorm. We woke up Saturday morning and there was substantial fire about half a kilometer west of our subdivision and about half a kilometer up the mountain. And we assisted some locals with some smaller equipment that we have here, 100-gallon tanks and pumps, and they had excavators pushing roads into it. And there was, I don't know how many people locally responded. There was probably about 15 of us, I guess, working on the fire. And then Sunday again, we were back at the same location because it was flaring up. And we got some bigger roads and a little bigger equipment in. We had 1,400-gallon tank on a big 6-wheel truck that was able to access it and put substantial amounts of water on it. And then, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, how many homes are we talking about, and how many people have stayed behind?
Well, in our subdivision, there's 11 homes, and I think there's still 8 property owners that have stayed to try to deal with the situation.
Lyndon, can I just clarify? You have all this equipment. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. I assume, are people like yourself and others fully trained and equipped to run it?
Yes, the local, all of us within our subdivision, the 11 owners, have all gone through the system. We have backup generators.
Can you clarify, what system is that? Is it like formal training? What did you do?
We just did it within our own community. There was no formal government training or anything, but everyone was shown how the hydrants work. We've stationed fire hose throughout the community. Everybody's familiar with how to start the generator, get the pumps going. And the issue we're having now is we need fuel to continue to run the generators that feed the water pumps to keep the system live. And food we're doing okay with, but we've kind of been blockaded in here, and they're not allowing us access to the nearest gas and grocery stores unless we choose to leave.
So if you lose propane, then this system won't work?
Yeah, the system, the propane generator runs the pumps that refill the tanks. Now, the CSRD has tentatively allowed a permit for a propane truck to come in and fill that one tank that runs the generator, that runs the pumps to refill the tank. Tentatively, tomorrow we've got a truck coming because we're under 30% on the propane tank for the generator there now.
What signs in your area are there of BC Wildfire Service firefighters? Are you seeing them? Are they at work?
We didn't see anything on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, but Tuesday we saw some people around, and then Wednesday there was aggressive activity, lots of helicopters, and it looked like they were sort of re-engaging and coming back to help us.
How do people? What went through your mind and your gut when you saw them there? Because we know that there has been some feelings, if it's fair to say, resentment or tension for some of those people who've decided to stay behind, and some of them claiming that they did so because they haven't seen enough action from BC Wildfire.
Well, it's tough for us in this area. We don't see the whole picture. I understand that there's demand on resources everywhere. But it was a little disheartening to see nothing visible anyways from Friday till at least Tuesday morning. And then the bigger sort of disheartening is the fact that they're just trying to remove us, and they won't even assess like the equipment and the infrastructure that we've got in this little community. We've got the ability to defend aggressively, but they don't want to take that into consideration. They just want us out.
And let's talk about, there's been, we've been seeing protests and hearing about convoys yesterday and today. Our listeners, our viewers, perhaps are wondering how you and your neighbors, if at all, are connected to those, who are loudly protesting against authority and blockades. Is your defiance a protest?
No, we're not interested in that at all. I don't believe that's going to solve anything. We just want to work with somebody, have somebody reasonably look at our situation and see the resources we have here and just let us use them. We're not trying to defy government or anything here. We're very disappointed in some of the aspects of the roadblocks and trying to stop us from even, they don't want anybody bringing anything across the lake in food or fuel. It's almost like they're trying to starve us out or something. But we're not looking for conflict. I don't want that kind of protest or anything. We just want somebody to come to the realization that there are a lot of people on this side of the lake that have incredible resources and are every bit as anxious, more so than the Forest Service is, to try to maintain some of these.
Lyndon, once the emergency has passed, and let's hope that it is soon, and once things calm down to some level of normalcy, what would you like to see in terms of some dialogue or an arrangement between you and BC Wildfire and the provincial government to see whether you can cooperate in the future?
Well, I don't think, and I don't know how it works from their end, you can't just blanketly say the best thing is for everybody to get out.
Right.
Because in the last 4-5 days, me and all of my neighbors and the people living here have put out an incredible amount of burning bush that had we not attended, there was no attendance from anybody else in the last 4 days. They would have escalated to extremely large fires.
And that was lightning strikes? Where were they compared, according to where your home is?
Lightning strike was the closest one. It was about 200 meters west of the property and about 100 meters up. On Tuesday, we attended that one. The local fire department did attend. We beat them there by about 15 minutes. But unfortunately, they didn't have any equipment that could get 800 feet up the mountain. Their pumps won't push that high. And they had no ability. They attended, but then they let us deal with it. They had no way of dealing with it.
Lyndon, stay with us. Joining us now is the BC United MLA for Shuswap. Greg Kylo recently toured the fire area in his region. Hello to you.
Hi, how are you doing this afternoon?
Well, thank you. Thanks for your time. When did you do this tour and what did you see?
Yeah, so I've not toured the fire impacted zone. I have a request in and hoping that I can get on site here in the next few days, but I haven't had confirmation of that yet. Most of my intel is coming from those that are on the ground within the community. And the calls have been fast and furious. There's a lot of folks that have been reaching out to the local MLA's office looking for answers and for support.
What are your thoughts, Greg, what are your thoughts on residents, like we've heard from Lyndon, those in Kate's Cove, staying behind despite an evacuation order?
Yeah, so I think it's important to clarify that residents do have the legal right to stay on their property and to defend their property, and many have chosen to do that. Yesterday, I was speaking to a gentleman by the name of Carl Bischoff. Now, the Bischoff family, these are world record holding loggers that have lived in the area for multiple generations. They've got access to heavy equipment, skidders, loaders, cats, water trucks. They're doing a yeoman's work up in the north of the Celista area in order to protect their property. They're certainly good friends, and I think neighbors of many of the volunteer fire departments that are also working in the area. So there is collaboration that is currently underway in the North Shuswap between many of these individuals that have the legal right to stay and protect their property, in working in conjunction and hand with both local fire departments. And I'm definitely heartened by some of the change in communication coming from BC Wildfire Service as they work to try and, legitimize or onboard some of these contractors that have lots of experience and have the safety equipment necessary for them to, work in conjunction and battle the enemy. And the enemy is the fire. We don't need to be picking fights amongst one another. We got to find ways of working collaboratively together in order to ensure that the community and the homes that these people are part of are saved.
And, I'm wondering about exactly that. The fire is the enemy, but you have this, fighting amongst ourselves. At what point does that get in the way? And what's the solution to these opposing thoughts about who can best protect people's homes?
Yeah, BC Wildfire Service, their resources are stretched incredibly thin. And, we've seen that. So I have no fault or criticism whatsoever of BC Wildfire Service. These folks are definitely highly skilled. They're very knowledgeable, and they're doing what they can. But in the absence of the necessary resources to protect the community, what are locals to do? Locals could choose to vacate the area and allow the wildfire to approach and burn up their family homes and properties and the areas, the community and the environment that they love and care so deeply about, or they can stay. And, it's important to note, and I like to make the distinction that Shuswap is very different from many other communities. The Shuswap, North Shuswap community obviously is bordered on Shuswap Lake. Many of these individuals have their own boats. They have alternate means of safe egress from the area. Should there be, a wildfire that flares up and is starting to really potentially threaten property in a big way, they do have the means of vacating the area. So, the narrative that many of those staying behind are negatively impacting or putting other personnel at risk, that's not entirely accurate for all of the individuals that have stayed behind. So, I think that on the ground, the folks on the ground, both the volunteer fire departments and the local contractors that are in the area, and also with BC Wildfire Service, there is a willingness, I think, to work together, and that is where we need to continue to focus our energies, how we can properly resource those individuals that are behind in order to protect the community that everybody loves and cares about so much.
Lyndon Kendrick, we're just about to head to our news break. Very quickly, can you tell us, what do you think of what you heard from Greg Kylo?
The fight is definitely with the fire. We just need a little bit more cooperation on the government side in allowing us to use the resources we have. We don't want to interfere with the forest services at all. As soon as they're on site, I'd be happy to let them. I'm tired of going in the bush and fighting fire.
Lyndon Kendrick, we really appreciate your time. He lives in the 11 homes at Kates Cove subdivision in Celista. Residents in 8 of those homes stayed to protect their homes despite an evacuation order. We appreciate you joining us. Greg Kylo, the BC United MLA for Shuswap, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right.
After the news, do you have questions about the impact wildfires are having on your drinking water? We'll speak to Interior Health and get some practical advice for you. And you're welcome to call us with your questions.
This is CBC News from Vancouver. Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Morton. No one was arrested during last night's confrontation at a wildfire checkpoint in the Sorrento area. Corporal James Grandy is with the Southeast District RCMP. He says officers on site were able to de-escalate the situation with no charges anticipated.
You know, our officers are well trained in diffusing situations such as this. And so at the end of it, the group peacefully departed, and no one was still allowed through, mind you, but it was peacefully rectified at that point.
Tensions continue to run high in the North Shuswap as people trying to make supply runs to evacuation zones keep getting turned away. Messages shared on social media indicated protesters plan to dismantle the checkpoint along Highway 1 near Blind Bay. Grandy says most of the people who showed up last night were not from the area. The BC Wildfire Service says the Bush Creek East fire in the Shuswap region remains the province's top priority blaze, and up to 150 more firefighters are scheduled to arrive by later today. Forrest Tower is a fire information officer with the BC Wildfire Service.
Our intention is to put people back in there as soon as possible, and so in some of the areas that we have temporarily removed our resources from. And yes, it does come down to the safety of our staff, and as well just the safety of everyone in general in the area.
Tower says they'll be relying on information provided by the RCMP and still want to work collaboratively with people in areas affected by wildfires. It's been a week since a firestorm tore through the Kelowna region, destroying more than 175 properties. Now some signs of normalcy are returning to the Okanagan. Tom Popick reports.
We're going to get everyone home tonight, and that's a big deal.
Kelowna Fire Chief Travis Whitting expects safety inspections will be completed and orders lifted in the city. Kelowna Airport is now slowly resuming daytime flights. Some airspace restrictions have been lifted, but BC Wildfire Service operations will continue to cause disruptions. Tourists can once again book hotel rooms, but only 4 homes have been destroyed in the city.
It was really heart-wrenching to see some of the destruction.
Across the lake, West Kelowna Mayor Gordon Milsom counts whole neighborhoods scorched. There's no timeline for evacuee returns or recovery here. Rebuilding is still a distant dream.
We're here to help you now and in the months and years to come.
West Kelowna Fire Chief Jason Brolin says weather is cooperating, but their job is not yet done.
We still are firefighting in many of these neighborhoods.
Wind gusts up to 50 kilometers an hour are forecast this afternoon. Temperatures will rise through the weekend. Tom Popick, CBC News, Kelowna.
In the U.S.,
Donald Trump is a rat. Calling him a rat, calling him a rat.
an opinionated crowd is making its way down the streets of Atlanta, Georgia. Former President Donald Trump will surrender later today at the Fulton County Jail. He'll be booked on more than a dozen charges alleging he tried to reverse the state's 2020 election results. 18 other defendants are also charged in the racketeering case Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis calls a broad criminal enterprise. Trump has agreed to a $200,000 bond and restrictions on what public statements he can make regarding the case. The president of Ukraine is weighing in on the plane crash that supposedly killed Yevgeny Prigozhin.
We have nothing to do with this situation, but I think everyone realizes who has.
Volodymyr Zelensky suggesting Russia may have had a hand in the death of the mercenary boss. The state's aviation agency says Prigozhin was on board the private jet he owned when it crashed in a region northwest of Moscow. The leader of the Wagner mercenary group fought on Russia's behalf in Ukraine, but his shot at infamy came when he led a failed mutiny. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he sends his condolences to Prigozhin's family, and he says the investigation into the plane crash will take time. And that's the CBC News from Vancouver. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/BC or use the CBC News app. Now taking a look at your local weather from Environment Canada. Sunshine for today and hazy, highs of 21 degrees, except 26 inland, and a few clouds for tonight with local smoke, cooling down to 15. Tomorrow, widespread smoke, highs of 23, except 28 inland, and clear in the evening with a low of 15. This weekend on Saturday, sunshine up to 29 inland and clear at night with a low of 15. And Sunday, sunshine with highs reaching 30 degrees inland. Now back to BC Today with Dan Burritt and Belle Puri.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Over the past few weeks, we've had some calls about, or a week I should say, we've had some calls from listeners concerned about smoke and ash impacting their health, in particular their drinking water. We're going to get into that with our next guest, but we want to hear from you. Do you have concerns about how the wildfires are affecting your drinking water? What questions do you want answered? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. Email us bctoday@cbc.ca.
Joining us now is Ivor Nolan, manager of the Interior Health Drinking Water Systems program. Right now, there are 620 water suppliers on a water advisory in the Interior Health region. Ivor, can you provide some context? How much of this is due to the wildfire threat?
Yeah, of those advisories that are active right now, about 52 of them were issued specifically because of impacts from the wildfires this season. We have about 87 systems that are directly impacted with evacuations and or damage. Some of them may have had advisories on them beforehand. So it's a smaller proportion of the overall number.
Why is it important for people to, be aware of who provides their water?
The first, in emergency situations like we're in now, it's critical so that you know where to get your information from. Some places it's pretty obvious, like I'm here in Salmon Arms, Shuswap territory, where we know our water comes from the city of Salmon Arms. So if we need, if there's concerns or if we need emergency direction, we can go to their website or call their staff. Other places, if you're new to the area or visiting, or there are multiple water suppliers in your community, it's all the more important that you're aware of where your actual tap water is coming from. So it's the first step for folks to ensure that they're aware and able to protect themselves.
If you have concerns about your water supply, give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver. You can call us on your cell, pound 690 on your cell. bctoday@cbc.ca is your email. Call on this or however else you are affected by the wildfires, if you are. Ivor, some of the listeners have wells in their properties and they're unsure if they can continue drinking water. What should they do?
The most important thing is to ensure that you're following the evacuation orders to start with. If your well hasn't been directly impacted by fire, there hasn't been actual physical damage to it, then the likelihood that your water quality has been impacted is very low. Folks can get their water tested, of course. There's certified labs, and you can reach out to your regional health authority websites for direction or advisement of where to get that testing done. And then we can support you with interpreting the results. But again, if you're on a well, fortunately, most places, a deep, well-protected well is safe from wildfire impacts.
And those tests, so what are you testing for?
It's important, just a basic chemical analysis to make sure there hasn't been any changes from baseline. And then from there, if there's been damage to the wellhead itself, you need to have an assessment done.
And if your main water source is contaminated, what options do they have short of either, is it bottled water, boiling it? What should they do?
Yeah, and if you did have direct damage to your well, I think was the example you're giving, then you'd want to make sure you're using an alternate source of water because there's been more awareness in recent years around potential to release chemicals into water systems when there's damage. And this has particularly come from the from the south of us in the United States. But just to be safe, you don't want to be taking any chances. You could use bottled water. That's if you've been directly damaged. Wells are very safe sources of water in most cases, and just your routine testing would have told you that before. So that's probably the best course of action.
And how long does it take for the water to clear up, that it's no longer contaminated and safe to drink?
Full flushing, and again, it depends on your circumstance. So if you're one of the communities now that have been impacted by fire and had physical damage, there's a full process of assessment and then making sure the system is secure, flushing the water out, doing a full flush of the system, and then retesting to make sure that it is safe.
Is there a way to tell, short of a test, for example, if somebody has decided to stay and they don't have access to one of these tests, Ivor, is there a way for them to tell if their water supply is unsafe or safe to drink? Is it color, smell?
Yeah, I mean, you got to trust your senses. With chemical contaminants, your nose is actually probably one of your best tools. You will smell contamination if there was something around your well, particularly if it's like a hydrocarbon like gasoline or something like that. But unable to access services to properly test and operate your well, you're definitely at risk. So staying behind in an evacuation area is not recommended, obviously, and you want to err on the side of caution.
Exactly, but I'm wondering, if you do stay behind and you're not sure, you can't tell, you can't see it, you can't smell it, what would be the impact of drinking contaminated water on one's health?
The greatest risk is always with pathogens. So if there's been physical damage to the well or the distribution system that's caused bacteria or viruses to get sucked in, then you could become ill very easily and quickly. If there has been physical damage to the well and perhaps there's been chemicals leaching from the damaged parts of the system, it really depends on what you've been exposed to. So it's hard to say, and usually a longer term impact. But it definitely, it's something that people shouldn't be taking chances with.
And Ivor, longer term on somebody's health, what arrangements should they be making for their water supply as we keep seeing wildfires getting worse?
Yeah, and my family certainly pay attention to the advice from emergency management about having a safe supply of water to get through for at least 72 hours, I believe it is. Having bottled water in your home in case you do have concerns or anything is disrupted with your system, that you're able to not have to make that choice and drink uncertain water. So definitely you want to be following that advice and having a supply of water available for you and your family.
Thank you so much. All very useful information. Good to talk to you, Ivor.
Oh, thank you.
Ivor Nolan is the manager of the Interior Health Drinking Water Systems Program. Well, earlier today, we heard an update from the Central Okanagan Regional District. Here's some of that update.
This is operational period number 16 for us. I'd like to start by expressing, again, my sympathy to all of those who have lost in this event. I understand yesterday was a very difficult day. But I'm here to provide as much information as I can and let all of you who are out there wondering behind the scenes on some of our operations. An incident of this scale, there's no undo button. This is just not going to go away. It's only through hard work and perseverance on all of our parts that we're going to get through this thing, and we are. Just like we said, the evacuation order rescinds are continuing. There'll be more to come today and more in the future days. The weather right now is in our favor, although we're always anticipating that may change. There are so many people who are working on this. It's not just emergency services anymore. The recovery component of this incident is growing by the moment. But we will get the job done on the ground. BC Wildfire Service is working hard at that along with us, and also they're working hard from the air as well. I want to make it clear, though, we still are firefighting in many of these neighborhoods. We're chasing down hotspots. We're dealing with smoke and what could potentially be flames and even larger issues. And along those notes, I want to reiterate what Brad Litke had said earlier, that there is a burn-off operation, at least one, maybe more, that will be taking place when conditions allow. I suspect that one may have already commenced, and it's going to be visible. People are going to see it, and they're going to think that things are getting worse again, and they're not. As Brad Litke mentioned, it's actually part of making things better. Alongside that operation, I want to assure the public that not only are the BC Wildfire Service experts involved in designing and executing it, but we have one of the largest structural fire departments in the country assembled in the base of that neighborhood, ready to protect the homes and deploy as required. I'm not expecting to have to use it, but we have this this tremendous force at our disposal, and they're standing by. Getting this work done is critical to getting people home and beginning to wind this incident up. So don't be scared, don't be worried when you see the smoke. See it as a sign of really expert people doing good work to get you home. I'm going to repeat my ask from yesterday about calls to 911. If you see smoke or a glow or small flames within the fire area, within the perimeter of the fire, we know about those. We have aircraft in the air. We have people on the ground patrolling. We don't need those reported to 911. What we do need reported to 911 is any smoke or fire outside of the fire perimeter or a large amount of smoke and fire that is unexpected. Those are indicators that we need to get on those things. So please balance those calls and only be making them when they're necessary. So a very common question that we're all getting is, when is my neighborhood going home? I don't have a crystal ball to tell you that, although I can repeat some of the factors that I mentioned yesterday that go into making these decisions. First and foremost, the neighborhood that you're returning to needs to be safe. The fire needs to be out. We need to have addressed debris and hazards. The neighborhood needs to be protected with either mop-up and extinguishment completed, and perhaps even a fire guard in place. We need to make sure it's secure and that you have a travel route to get in and out of your neighborhood. We're also looking at utilities and making sure that there's water sufficient enough in the fire hydrants to fight a house fire in that neighborhood that may be completely unrelated to the incident. We need to address the risk and make sure there's no chance of things getting worse, because I don't want to have to evacuate anyone a second time. And finally, we need to look at impact to our operations. We can't have neighborhoods in place when we're still looking at doing these burn-off operations. It just is not conducive to that. We have lots of equipment on the ground and we need the space to do it. So all of those factors go into that. Primarily across my jurisdiction at this point, there's two main reasons why we're continuing to keep people out of their homes. The first is because there's still fire in your neighborhood and or significant damage from fire in your neighborhood. And the second reason is that there is the risk still of fire. And we're still not wanting to put you back in because we don't want to make it worse with you in there. The weather is going to drive those factors. And there may still be firefighting activities going on in your neighborhood and or sprinkler protection on your house. So those are the primary reasons why many of you are still out. I don't want to speculate on numbers or timeframes. There are large neighborhoods that we continue to draw closer and closer to getting back home. But there are also neighborhoods where it's going to be a little while, and particularly those that have sustained significant fire damage. We're working through how do we really make those safe for you to go home. So just ongoing patience. There will be every day. It's the topic of discussion, and there will be more rescinds coming. So on a lighter note, a couple of things. I do want to say I'm doing fine for underwear. Thank you for those who sent it. Please don't feel that that's what I need because it's not. It leads me to want to thank the public for their outpouring of support. It really is the fuel that keeps us all going. Being able to read your comments and the cards that you've dropped off and see the signs outside the fire hall is what fuels my men and women, as well as all of the men and women who are involved. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to say I know the pig in Bear Creek Road North area is getting a lot of attention. My fire crews have adopted him or her. So it's being well fed, it's being well watered, and is just happy as a pig could be there. So based on improving fire conditions, we were working with our partners at the Wildfire Service, were able to arrange for the demobilization of structural resources. 32 fire engines were sent back to their communities over the last 24 hours. The public needs to see that as a positive sign. I don't have any unmet needs in that department. I actually need to be looking at returning these men and women to the communities that they came from. So as I do that, I wish to thank them and the fire chiefs who have compromised in order for them to be here. That said, on the structural fire side today, we have 23 trucks out in the field, and it represents 117 people still working on the ground. A number of those trucks, by no means the majority, actually just a small number of those trucks are from your very own West Kelowna fire rescue firefighters who will be the last ones off the line. That's what they told me. So along those lines, and because our base will be moving to a different location, there will be no fire truck parade tonight. So I want to let the public know you won't see the fire trucks where you're used to seeing them any longer. They'll be moving to a location that's a little bit more efficient and a little bit more better suited to the operation. But I do want to say just how overwhelming that has been to everyone who's operated off of that site on Old Okanagan Highway. Seeing like hundreds of you come out and cheer on the firefighters, again, is the fuel that keeps them going. But please don't come tonight because it's going to be a very quiet place. We know that you're behind us because we hear your honks, we see your thank yous, and please keep that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Brolin. If I could ask to the mic now, Paul Zidovit from Wilson's Landing Fire. He's our Wilson's Landing Fire Chief in Electoral Area West.
Good morning. My name is Paul Zidovich. I'm the Chief at Wilson's Landing Fire. This fire has been and continues to be a fire chief's nightmare. The force, speed, and intensity of the fire is unprecedented in our community. 2 years ago, as we worked the White Rock Lake fire, we thought at the time that it was the biggest fire of our lives. It pales to what we just experienced. I'd like to thank all the men and women that have come from all over the BC and Alberta to help us. They have been instrumental in the success we're achieving. Currently, we have 2 task forces, BC Wildfire Crews, Northwest Side Crews, and Wilson's Landing Crews, along with aircraft and support personnel. I'd also like to thank the members of Wilson's Landing Fire Department that I've had the immense honor of serving with. Our community has suffered an incredible blow. 13 of our members have lost homes. Yet from the very first spark, you've shown up and fought this fire while your own homes were burning behind you. I have no words to describe the pride that I feel to be part of this team. I also need to thank Chief Koczowski and Deputy Chief Barnes with their crews from Northwest Side for the ongoing mutual aid and support they have provided on this event. Lastly, I'd like to thank our incredible community for the support we've received. From residents dropping off supplies to mamas and mamas coordinating an immense relief effort for our displaced members. Fire activity has been low for 48 hours. BC Wildfire has installed a machine guard and is completing a backburn to create a larger guard. Sprinkler crews are on scene and protecting structures, and crews are eliminating hotspots and sources of ignition and fire smarting. I want to take a moment today to express my deepest condolences to everyone that have lost their homes. When I say we're with you, know that I mean it. We understand the pain and grief that you're feeling because we're feeling it too. Know that this is what is driving us every single day as we work to protect homes and make sure areas are safe for you to return to. Myself, Chief Koczowski, and the rest of our crews will be out there every day fighting for this community. I know you're tired of hearing it, we're tired of saying it, but we need your patience. We do not want to send anyone back into the area that is unsafe, and it is still unsafe. As soon as it is safe to return home, we will let you know. And for those that lost homes, we will continue to support you through emergency support services to find long-term accommodation and find you the support that you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. If we could please have Travis Whiting, Kelowna Fire Chief, come to the mic.
Good morning. First off, just following up, our thoughts continue to be with those fighting the fire over on the west side of the road as they continue to deal with the loss over there. On this side of the lake, we've been fortunate to be at a different stage of the fire, and very happy to hear Incident Commander Brad Lickey let us know that our fire is being held within the city of Kelowna and in Lake Country. So that's great news. It's excellent news. And if you were to ask me on Thursday or Friday of last week, I didn't think we would be here at this point, but I just want to put out my appreciation for BC Wildfire, the many structural departments that attended, and our own crews from Kelowna Fire Department that have spent the last 7 days dug in deep, working to carry this forward. And you'll continue to see Kelowna Fire working in conjunction with BC Wildfire to patrol neighborhoods, working in the fire areas to continue to finish this off and make it safe for everybody. So I just want to put out that thank you to all those involved, and a shout out to my own crews from here in Kelowna Fire for the excellent work they continue to do through the night and day. Great news for us on this portion of the lake for the McKinley Clifton fire, or Walroy Lake, as Brad called it. If it's in the city of Kelowna with the fire that we're dealing with now, it is our goal today to get everyone home by the end of today. It's great news. We're hoping to have evacuation orders reduced within all areas within the city of Kelowna specifically. And I just want to be clear, that's just within the city of Kelowna on the McKinley Clifton fire. But it's going to take a bit of time and some logistics. And our number one priority through today is safety, safety of responders and safety of the people returning home. We have had the fire held, but we still have some issues within the fire perimeter, including danger trees and such, that we need to do a sweep and ensure that we've made the home safe for you to return to. So the process that will happen today is we will be using courtemergency.ca, and it's critical that people that are in these areas go to courtemergency.ca, where we will be announcing neighborhood by neighborhood the areas that are safe to return to, as our crews work through each neighborhood determining that they are safe to return and that all of our equipment and resources have been moved out of the way for you. It's important that you not return home until courtemergency.ca lets you know that, where we want to avoid any unnecessary traffic congestion or people in the way while we try to move resources and get these neighborhoods open. So if we could ask you to show this last piece of patience for us as we work through today and potentially into tomorrow to get everyone home. We want to do a systemic way of doing this where it is deemed to be safe. So again, courtemergency.ca. There's a few steps that we want people to be aware of as you return home, because you're not returning home to the same neighborhood that you left. Fire has burned in very close to a lot of these homes, right into the backyards, and there are some steps we need you to take to ensure that you're doing so safely. First off, we need people to stay out of natural areas and parks within the fire perimeter area until we have reopened those areas. We have crews that will be working over the next week or two doing danger tree assessments and safety checks to ensure that we can get those open as soon as we can. But we really need cooperation of the public to stay out of those areas and let our crews work. We will be falling trees. We will be undertaking actions, and having residents in there will make us stop our work and delay further openings. You'll also find information on courtemergency.ca under resources and what it is to return to a home if you've been away for an extended period of time, and in some areas where power was disrupted. Issues such as spoiled food, power and water restoration, and other situations that occur to ensure that you're returning safely. This is really exciting news. I can tell you at the fire hall, the mood is very, very high and very, very positive this morning. It has been our goal for the last 7 days to get to get all our residents home safely, and we couldn't be more excited to see this happen today. So again, courtemergency.ca, super excited. We're going to get everyone home tonight, and that's a big deal. So stay in touch, stay in tune, take care of each other, and yeah, we'll do our best to get you home tonight. Thank you.
That's a recording of the latest update from the Central Okanagan Regional District, and it's good to hear some lightness in their voice, the various chiefs. We heard from Jason Brolin, the chief of West Kelowna, telling us that they are starting to return equipment, trucks that have come from fire departments in other communities and from around the province, and they're moving their own command center and from where they're working. So a lot of positive bits and pieces coming out of there today. Can't forget from Paul Zidowitz, though, the Wilson's Landing fire chief, saying this is the chief's nightmare, the fire they're facing, and 13 members of his department have lost their homes, but they continue to fight those fires. And in Kelowna, the last little bit that we just heard, in the city of Kelowna, everyone should be home by the end of the day. At 2 o'clock, we'll get you an update from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District. We will bring that to you live. Now it is time for a news update with Michelle Morton.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Police say no one was arrested during last night's confrontation at a wildfire checkpoint in the Sorrento area. The Southeast District RCMP says officers on site were able to de-escalate the situation with no charges anticipated. Tensions continue to run high in the North Shuswap as people trying to make supply runs to evacuation zones keep getting turned away. Messages shared on social media indicated protesters plan to dismantle the checkpoint along Highway 1 near Blind Bay. Police say most of the people who showed up last night were not from the area. The fire situation in the Kelowna area continues to improve. Officials say the rain overnight has held, but the McDougall fire remains out of control. Residents are being warned as well not to panic if they see smoke in the coming days. Firefighters are deliberately burning fuel that could spark fires in the hot weather forecast this weekend. And officials in the Northwest Territories say the wildfire-threatening Yellowknife remains 15 kilometers away. They say the blaze is not expected to reach the city in the next 3 days, held at bay by firefighters and favorable weather. Now we'll look at the local weather. Sunshine today and hazy, highs of 21 except 26 inland, and a few clouds for tonight with local smoke cooling down to 15 degrees. Now back to BC Today with Dan Burritt and Belle Puri.
Thanks very much, Michelle. You're listening and watching our extended coverage of the provincial state of emergency here in BC Today. We'd love to hear from you from wherever you are, how you're affected. Give us a call across this great big province, 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. Email us bctoday@cbc.ca.
Between an emergency alert and emergency order, your mind may race over everything you want to take before you have to leave your home. Aside from personal items, you should be able to fit everything you need for an emergency in a single box or a bag. Now, joining us to suggest what to include is Vicki Swan. She is a public education officer with BC's Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. Thank you, Vicki, for making time for us. I know people have been asking these questions a lot. We talk about emergency kits and grab and go bags, but what's the difference?
Thanks for allowing me to visit with you today and talk about this really important topic. And thank you for all the amazing coverage that you've been giving. It's astounding. So many stories, and it's great to have all the information you're sharing. So you have a grab and go bag, which you want to have close by your door in case you need to evacuate or leave in an emergency situation or evacuate suddenly. An emergency kit is something that you want to have as well, but that's more for if you have to shelter in place, and sometimes that can be for 3 to 2 weeks that you would need to prepare a kit for. So I think I'll talk about a grab and go bag first, if that's okay with you, the things that you would put in that. Okay, terrific. So a grab and go bag is like a little emergency mini emergency kit. And you want to personalize that for yourself. And as a matter of fact, everybody in your household should have one of these bags. And you should even have one for each of your pets and have one for all the children in your household as well. So you will want to have food with you. Enough for a day is really terrific. I like to take a big water bottle in my grab and go bag and have some food. Again, I take enough to get me through the day. So I've got a variety of things. I've got granola bars and I've got dried fruits and I've got nuts and some treats for me as well. Communications is really important when you're in an evacuation situation. So you want to make sure that you communicate and find out what's going on. Super critical to have your phone with you. And make sure you have a phone charger. If your phone dies, you'd want to have a battery backup. So that's a battery bank in case your phone dies when you're in an evacuation situation. Something else that's really great to have in your grab and go bag is a hand crank radio. Something with battery backup is really terrific too. But you know what? When you're putting together your grab and go bags, they don't have to be, everything doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to be a big expense. You can actually get radios from thrift stores for pittance. So you don't have to buy anything new. As a reminder, something that I've done with my radio, I've written the call letters for all the radio stations that are close to me. And that's a pretty good idea if you aren't listening to radio on a regular basis, and just so that you have them all listed, which is fantastic. Super important to have some type of flashlight, because you might have to evacuate in the middle of the night. So that's a good item to have. Headlamps, really a good idea, because then if you are dealing with children or pets or need to go hands-free, then that's helpful. Make sure you have some batteries to go with you in case you run out of batteries for your radio and also your flashlight. Super important to have some seasonal clothing, and right now things keep changing, so if there's a chance of rain, it's always nice to have a raincoat, have sturdy footwear, and have other items that are seasonal that you'll possibly need. Super important to have a MIDI emergency kit or a medical emergency kit. And one thing I keep tucked away in mine is a extra puffer, because I need one of those. So you might want to put in extra medications in here in case you have to evacuate in an emergency, and that means you don't have to run around looking and putting together medications. I've also attached to mine a mask because I have sensitivities, and of course, when you're in a fire situation, it can be helpful to have a mask. Really good idea to have toiletries as well. I wear glasses, so I have an extra pair of glasses. I also have extra contacts and contact solution, and other things like toothpaste and soap.
And this is just the go bag, because there's a lot of things in it.
There's a lot of things, but you know what? My go bag's pretty small. It squishes up pretty good.
Okay, well, that's what I want to see, how you squish it all up. And how long is this supposed to sustain one? You know, like a day, 2 days?
This is like a day, something you just need in an emergency situation where you don't have time to put together a lot of things and it's urgent. So wildfire season, you should have one of these by your door.
And what
Good
else
idea
is...
to have a whistle.
Yeah.
Sorry. And sorry, I shouldn't have spoken. And have a pad of paper and a pen, because there'll be a lot of information you're probably collecting when you're in an emergency situation. And sometimes we're stressed. Good idea to write things down. Because this is a personalized kit, something that's not on our list, which you can find a list of items to put in your emergency kit at Prepared BC under grab and go bag, make a grab and go bag, is personal items. I put in a book and I put in a deck of playing cards, just because if I'm waiting or there's a stressful situation, those things will help calm me down. Now, the last thing you want to have in your kit is, and this is one of the most critical items, is you want to have a home emergency plan. And again, if you go to the Prepared BC website, you can get a fill in the blanks downloadable home emergency plan. And that's what I've got right here. I downloaded this and filled in the blanks. Super important to get that filled in. You want contact information in there. So all the people in your household, have you got their phone numbers memorized, their work and their cell phone numbers? Likely not. So good idea.
Nope, it's all just in contacts.
Exactly.
We used to do that, not anymore.
As long as you can hit send.
And that's one of the reasons it's a good idea to write it all down and make sure if you got kids, you got all their contact information in there, their daycares, their schools. You want to list a meeting place in case you get split up, because chances are in emergency situations, you're not all going to be together if you need to evacuate. Also, you want to know, where can you get information? So super important to find out if there's an emergency in your community, where would you get information? List all the radio stations. Good idea to check in with your local government or First Nation and see how they'll be communicating to the public and the people they serve during an emergency. So will they have websites? Do they have a social media? Write all that stuff down. Super important. And make sure you list Emergency Info BC, because that's verified public information during an emergency situation. So that's good to have in there as well.
Vicky,
and,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Medical information too, critical. So if you have anybody taking medication or they have special needs, good stuff to put in your plan. And also you might want to attach with your plan a copy of your home insurance and a copy of any prescriptions that you have.
I was going to ask about documents, and you answered part of our question there. But in the event of an emergency, we know people can panic. They can not be thinking clearly or rationally as much as they do. Beyond home insurance and other things, what other documents do you suggest people get together ahead of time?
Well, I have a copy of my driver's license in there. And so you would want to do that. And you would want to have also copies of your insurance for your vehicles as well in your plan. And anything that's important for your kids and their care should be in there. And anything that's important for the care of your dog. So you might want to have information about their medications if they have any, and information about their registration, for example, in your plan. Yeah. And then, of course, something that can happen in emergency situations, a variety of emergency situations, is phone lines can go down, bank machines can go down. So really good idea to bring some cash with you. So really good idea to have a bunch of small bills tucked away in your emergency kit.
All of this is on a list somewhere, I'm assuming. I don't have to.
It's on a list.
Writing it all down.
So if you go, Emergency Management and Climate Readiness BC has a site called Prepared BC. And we have a list of what to put in your grab and go bag, and we have a list of what to put in your emergency kit. So your emergency kit is a bigger version of the grab and go bag, and also you put more food into that kit as well. So typically when you're making an emergency kit, you've got a couple of containers because you're also needing to have water for everybody for each day that you're going to be in place. So you may be putting those in totes or big suitcases or duffel bags. What I use for my grab and go bag, I used to have a small backpack, but I ended up getting given one of these, which is great. Again, it's a backpack. It's a little bit bigger, but what I like about it, it's got wheels, and I can put it on my back as well. Yeah. So it's the best of both worlds. And it's not that big. Look, it's just not even half of me.
For those of you who can't see it, who are not joining us, who are joining us on radio, theater of the mind, that's okay, Vicki. We're trying to paint a picture for everybody. It's basically what looks like sort of a rolling carry-on, I guess, if you will, for what you might take in the event of an emergency. Vicki, there's a lot of information you've given us, and we really appreciate it. How have the various emergencies, depending on what you take, or depending on the emergency, does that dictate what exactly you ought to take? Whether we know we're dealing with wildfires right now, but there's also concern in BC, as we well know, we sit on several fault lines. So is there a difference between how we ought to prepare for different emergencies?
There's a little bit of variation, but not a whole lot. So what we recommend is this grab and go bag is going to work for all the different emergencies. So is your emergency kit. One thing that people might be interested to learn about is Prepared BC has we have 20 different guides altogether about how to prepare for different hazards. So there's one for earthquakes and tsunamis, one really good one for wildfire that you might want to look up. We've got them for every hazard. And
should we be having these packed and ready, long before there is an emergency? And if so, then I imagine, every few months you have to go back in and make sure your batteries haven't died, your water hasn't gone bad, or whatever else is in there?
Yeah, exactly. So they should be packed in advance because there's usually no warning that emergencies are going to happen. So have your grab and go bags ready and by the door. And if you have the time, create other ones for your vehicle and your workplace as well. Good point that you raised. It's a good idea to go into them a couple of months of the year. And there's two reasons to do that. See if anything's expired. So things that expire that surprise people is water actually expires. And one thing I do with my water is if I purchase it from the store, I always circle the date that it's going to expire on. And then on the bottle, I write whether it's going to expire in fall or spring. So that's an indicator for me, because the first day of fall and the first day of spring, I open up my grab and go bags and my emergency kits, And anything that's expired, I take it out and I replace it. And I also check that everything's working. I check my radio's working, and I check the expiration date also on my batteries, because they are another thing that expires. And sometimes, it's good to go through your emergency plan, because you might need to update the information. People's medications change in situations, and you might have new pets. Yeah.
Vicky, we know that we've heard concerns, and we've seen this in some of the reporting that CBC has done. For example, in the Northwest Territories, where fire has wiped out fiber optic cable lines, communication has been cut off for people, whether it's cell phones, landlines, online access. Are there tools, like I'm thinking walkie-talkies, other things that you would recommend that people get to try and keep in contact if phones don't work?
Yeah, I think that's another thing to ask your local government about. What are they going to do in the case that communications goes down? They might have some very good suggestions. One of the things that we suggest for keeping it in touch, because it doesn't chew up a lot of bandwidth and it's going to reduce the time you're spending on devices, is potentially have like a Facebook page that's set up in advance for your family in case of an emergency. So family and any of your critical contacts, like contacts outside of the community, that are going to be your links. Because one thing that's really important when you're doing an emergency plan is to make sure you identify somebody who's going to be your contact outside of your community. So this should be somebody who's not going to be experiencing the same emergencies that you are. So, for example, my sister in Kamloops, I live on Vancouver Island, is my emergency contact. And I'm hers as well, because typically when she's experiencing issues, she can also come here and stay. So that way she's not chewing up resources like hotels that some people don't have options where they have to stay in hotels because they don't have anywhere to go. But that's something that's we really hope that people will do when you're planning for emergencies and thinking about the potential of evacuation. Is there family or friends that you can stay with rather than going to hotels, because some people won't have options.
We know you have to go. Just one time again, quickly, what's the website address for these lists?
So preparedbc.ca will get you to where you need to go to see the information about how to put together a grab and go bag. And also in that area, you can find home emergency plans that you can download, home emergency kit information. There's guides to different hazards and different resources.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was great. There's lots of material to learn from. Good to talk to you, Vicki.
Thank you for having me on. Terrific.
Vicki Swan is a public education officer with BC's Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. We want to hear from you. Do you have a kit put together? Do you check it regularly? Call us at 1-800-825-5950 in Metro Vancouver, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone, by email, bctoday@cbc.ca.
We're going to get to some emails, and we appreciate those emailing us in right now. David writes us to say, I was once told to keep all my go bag items in a construction weight trash bag. Sounds odd, but it makes a great rain poncho or pajama cover-up if you have to flee at night. Good advice there, David. Appreciate that. Ivan in Salmon Arm says, regarding those who stayed to fight fires in the North Shuswap, despite the order to leave, I can appreciate their willingness to put their lives and resources on the line to deal with immediate threats. But the question I have is how many of them were already volunteers with the local volunteer fire departments? If not already volunteers, why weren't they? And considering the future risks, will they be willing to volunteer, get the formal training, commit to regular participation, and take directions from the command structure that governs such firefighting efforts? Or are they only wanting to make the effort in an unstructured way now and then go back to not taking part in organized, coordinated firefighting efforts in the North Shuswap? Interesting question.
Very good question. Well, as we know, these wildfires have been brutal not only on people, but animals as well, wildlife and pets. West Kelowna resident Karamia Laurie's family owns Broken Rail Ranch. They offer trail rides to visitors. Well, her family had to flee their land last week and move dozens of animals with help from others. They got out 19 horses, several goats, cats, bunnies, a mini mule, and a mini pony, but 2 big pigs wouldn't leave.
They were stubborn. Laurie says, sadly, though, fire destroyed their house, their barn, their tech room, and several outdoor washrooms and a stage. Despite that loss, her family is safe, and so is one of the hogs. Laurie spoke with our Sarah Penton on CBC's Radio West in Kelowna yesterday.
So there were 2 pigs. Unfortunately, we did get confirmation on Monday that one of the 2 pigs passed away. So she just got caught up in the fire and didn't make it. But the other pig, Pumbaa, survived, which is just like a miracle by all accounts. So she...
How'd you find out Pumbaa survived?
Oh, yeah. So the same neighbor who is a helicopter pilot spotted her from the air and actually tossed down some granola bars for her because he was worried that she wouldn't have anything to eat.
Literally flying by in a helicopter, seeing Pumbaa. This is a large pig.
Yes.
Chucked some granola bars out the helicopter.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm sure she really enjoyed those.
I'm sure she did.
But yeah, the firefighters have been feeding her and giving her water, and we actually had the vet check her out, and she's 110% healthy, which is amazing. The only theory we have as to how she survived, because the grass around her is green, you can see in the photos, but she is like a good couple hundred feet from where her enclosure is. So we think that when she got to that area, she was just like caught up in the eye of the storm, so to speak, and it just burnt so fast that she survived.
And she's just wandering around. Do you worry that she's going to run away?
Honestly, no. I mean, from all the photos we've seen over the course of like a few days, she's been within like a 15-feet radius. So she seems to have found her place, and I don't anticipate her going anywhere else.
I don't know. I don't know what their radius is. Do they move very quickly? I don't know.
She has in the past tried to escape, but I honestly don't think she will. I don't know if they're like. I mean, they're smart. Like they know where their home is, and I think she knows that this is where the food is.
Because the firefighters, I mean, another reason you and I are talking is your family has posted pictures of the firefighters, the wildfire fighters, feeding her, like helping her out. Tell us a little bit more about how the firefighters have been helping out.
Yeah, they've been feeding her and they've been giving her water, and we've gotten some really, really awesome photos out of that. And yeah, she's just happy as can be. She's got all this room to herself. She's rooting around in the grass. She's living her best life.
Living her best life. Well, Pumbaa, we're glad that you're happy and safe and stay that way.
Yes, and for anybody who on radio who didn't see those photos, go to our website, cbc.ca/BC. It's a bit of levity in a sort of a field of grief, and you can see this pig is surviving and thriving on a whole bunch of snacks from those firefighters. Sadly, her companion, who reportedly ran into the woods, didn't make it, but we're glad that Pumbaa is safe, and certainly the wildfires have an impact on all sorts of species. Want to get back to some emails now. Aaron writes us, when it comes to go bags, do not forget your passport. Very good advice. Michael writes us to say, I am impressed by the way this particular situation is being discussed. He's talking about the protests and at the blockade. As a result of the information and perspective shared by various people, from those retired and qualified, those trained and taking on protecting their property, I should say those who've stayed behind, those who are forestry officials to the RCMP and the MLA, all are realizing that positive change can come from diffusing conflict and arranging different relationships for the next fire season. It would seem obvious that local knowledge and expertise can simply be evaluated during the year and then arrangements made to allow those local groups to take part in firefighting. More resources being available should make firefighting easier and better for all. Collaboration is always better than resistance and rebellion by the population or force by the authorities. Of course, authorities have the rights and needs to control a situation by accessing the support support of local people. They enhance their abilities to get the job done. The public needs to respect the authorities, yet challenge any obvious weaknesses or poor response. Thank you for that email as well.
Well, rain and cooler temperatures in the Shuswap region meant clear skies and calm waters on the lakes. Today, boaters took advantage of the conditions to deliver supplies to communities still under evacuation order. Our John Hernandez went along for a ride to survey some of the damage and speak with residents on the front lines.
Another day, another supply run. This dock in Chase, east of Kamloops, a hub for donations to be boated across the Shuswap Lake.
We're not going on the land, we're just going to docks.
Chase resident Kelly Esslinger agreed to take us on one of his runs to the burning North Shore, where many people have defied provincial evacuation orders.
How do you balance that? How do you balance what you're hearing from sort of the officials, but then your eagerness to get materials to people that have stayed behind?
Well, really, at the end of the day, I don't think we're doing anything wrong. We're just taking supplies by boat to residents that are in a lot worse situation that we are in.
Along the way, a glimpse at some of the destruction and horror. Deserted pumps run from burned down houses to the water, a sign that people tried to save their homes but fled.
We're on Little River that runs through Squilax. The fire tore through this area on Friday, and we heard stories of residents having to seek shelter underneath this bridge right here.
The loss is visible on both sides of the water near the Little Shuswap Lake First Nation.
It's devastating because you know the people.
Yeah.
And you know the band members, and you don't know how long it's going to take to get them back into a home.
For the past few days, fuel and generators have been dropped off here in Lee Creek.
And a huge shout out to, a lot of people that are volunteering their time.
Received by residents defying evacuation orders.
I don't know if my house would be here if I wasn't here. And I built that house from scratch, and that would be quite devastating to me.
Forester and former firefighter Jason Workington has been on the front lines for days. He says locals here have actively been working with wildfire crews.
Well, there's not a lot of them out here, but the level of collaboration has been great. There's been lots of collaboration going on. Like I say, they've been working with the locals to provide a little education and strategies.
The province says there's about 200 firefighters across the region and maintains that defying orders isn't safe. A message heard and declined by these residents as they do what they think is best. John Hernandez, CBC News, Chase.
And just to clarify, that report from John Hernandez was yesterday. In fact, John is at in and around the area of Sorrento with our colleague Chad Pawson, who has been tweeting out, and he is at the roadblock there, if we can call it that. So it says Highway 1 closure at Blind Bay Road in Sorrento. Several transport trucks, this is on Twitter, or X, whatever it's called, are being turned around as they weren't aware of the closure. Service trucks are going into the North Shuswap. Saying that people here are nonplussed by Thursday night's convoy. And you'll be able to see more of those reports online, cbc.ca/BC, on radio throughout the afternoon and evening, and on television and video tonight at 6 and at 11. I think we have some emails again.
We do. We want to just get a couple more of them out to you. From Alice, we hear, I'm not currently in a wildfire affected area, but I'm still working on updating my go bags and emergency plan at the moment. Part of the process is listing the contents and general locations of items in the 2 go bags and cold weather add-on bag, and adding expiry dates of anything that has one. Everything is packed in appropriately sized plastic bags to keep things dry, as well as the usual items. I also added a book of card games and a deck of cards. There are some last-minute items that need to be added, like computers and passports, but they're all in the same place with their carry bag close by. I'm also going to volunteer with our local emergency response group, so lots of preparedness there on Alice's part.
And Andrea writes us, one thing that I noticed as someone who is disabled, who relies on pharmacare for medicines, is that they do not allow you to have extra for an emergency kit. They will only refill when about 10 days prior to running out, and no amount is built in for emergencies at all. So a lot of the most vulnerable people who rely on medications to live are not going to have them included in grab-and-go kits. Aside from that observation, I suggest people include some treats in their kits like chocolate bar, caramel, something that will be cheery in a difficult time. Very good advice. I once had a bag full of chickpeas for a high-protein survival, then realized I would not want to survive if all I had was chickpeas to eat. Good point. I also worked in Thailand after the tsunami. Everyone's phone had been washed away in the waves and no one could find each other because they did not have contact info. Expect that level of disruption in an emergency. You may not be able to find anyone for a long time. Be as self-sufficient as possible.
Chickpeas and chocolate together. It's all good.
What a magical combination. Nuts and gum. The time is almost 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the Mountain Time Zone. In a few moments, we'll get an update from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District. We'll bring that to you live. You're listening and watching to BC Today. Now time for the news.
This is CBC News from Vancouver. Good afternoon. I'm Tim Weeks. The fire situation in the Kelowna area continues to improve. Some evacuees are being allowed to return home, but others are finding out they have no home to return to. Renee Filipponi has the latest.
Expressing again my sympathy to all of those who have lost in this event. I understand yesterday was a very difficult day.
It's been a relief for some and devastation for others as they find out the fate of their homes through a regional district website. Officials say the rain overnight has helped, but the McDougall fire remains out of control. Jason Brolin is the West Kelowna fire chief.
There's no undo button. This is just not going to go away. It's only through hard work and perseverance on all of our parts that we're going to get through this thing, and we are.
Some evacuation orders and alerts have been lifted, but Brolin says it will take time to get everyone home because they need to make sure neighborhoods are safe. Meanwhile, firefighters continue to tackle hotspots, and residents are being warned not to panic if they see smoke in the coming days. Firefighters are deliberately burning fuel that could spark fires in the hot weather forecasted this weekend. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Kelowna.
Refugee advocacy groups are urging Ontario and the federal government to address a crisis now at the boiling point. Shelters are overwhelmed by a growing number of asylum seekers. Some organizations have stepped in to provide relief, but they say they're at their very limit. Megan Fitzpatrick has more.
Holding signs that read "We need shelter" and "We love Canada," refugee claimants protest outside Premier Doug Ford's office. For the last 4 weeks, the faith group Pilgrim Feast Tabernacles has provided food and shelter to what's now 157 people. The nonprofit organization is based in a shopping plaza, and its leaders are using every inch of vacant space in the building, including a former bank. Women are sleeping on mattresses behind the teller desks and beside the bank vault. Beatrice Wathira came from Kenya and is seeking asylum.
I believe Canada is the best place where I can be protected.
Housing refugee claimants has been an ongoing conflict between the municipal and federal governments, but Pilgrim Feast's executive director Nadine Miller says Ford should play a role too.
As the bills mount, we need Doug Ford to be our voice.
Ford's office says it did recently announce more funding to help and that it's the federal government that needs to take more action. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Toronto.
Vladimir Putin is breaking his silence about the plane crash that apparently killed one of his former confidants. Russian officials say mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin died in a plane crash yesterday, but a falling out between the two men is sparking questions about the circumstances of Prigozhin's death. Dominic Valitis reports.
Vladimir Putin claimed he only learned about the crash this morning. In the televised address, the Russian leader sent his condolences to the families of the 10 people who were killed. He paid tribute to Prigozhin, describing him as a talented businessman, someone he'd personally known since the 1990s. But in an apparent reference to Prigozhin's short-lived coup in June, Putin also called him a person with a complicated fate and someone who made serious mistakes in life. While Putin originally vowed to punish the mutineers, he had supposedly reached a deal with Prigozhin. It's still not clear why the plane crashed. That, Putin warned, would take investigators time to determine. Unnamed US intelligence sources, though, say they believe the jet was downed by a surface-to-air missile originating in Russia. Dominic Valitis, CBC News, London.
And that's the CBC News from Vancouver. Now back to BC Today, a special edition with your hosts Dan Burritt and Belle Puri.
Thank you very much. And we want to take you now live to an update from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District.
We appreciate you taking time for these updates. If you could give us a quick on-camera update for media watching, and then we'll ask you to share your screen to show the map of the current situation.
Thanks. I hope the service is okay. I'm, as mentioned, in the midst of an incident management team transition, so I'm not at my usual spot and are on a different Wi-Fi connection. So we'll try to share screen after my verbal update and go from there. So we are still responding to Bush Creek East in a number of places today. We have over 139 wildland firefighters, 112 structural protection firefighters. They're complemented by roughly 50 pieces of structural protection equipment still, and then 70-ish pieces of heavy equipment. Those numbers are going to be fairly dynamic over the next day or two. We're expecting, I mentioned on one of the previous calls, about 100 to 150 more resources in the complex onto this fire. They were getting 100 Mexican firefighters. They were delayed by a day, so they will be arriving tomorrow. So 100 Mexican firefighters, and then there will likely be some component of BC Wildland firefighters as well. We will be, we're at the point now in some of our crews where they'll be cycling off the fire, and as they cycle off, new crews are brought in. So expecting just a bit of resource number shuffling, but we are getting more in terms of, like I said, those Mexican firefighting component coming into the complex. And as mentioned, we are still a complex, even though this update is focused on the Bush Creek East. So we have 17 helicopters that those resources are still shared between the Rossmore Lake wildfire and the Bush Creek East wildfire. And are kind of just assigned based on operational tactics and what ground crews are looking for, primarily again used for bucketing operations, as well as right now there's a large amount of turnover between our teams happening. So a really big component of that being flights with the operations team. So you may see increased helicopter activity just flying around everywhere. That's our operations team handing over from our team to the next team. So all of the section chiefs and division supervisors all the way down in those supervisory roles, they need to pass on all that information to the next team. And our team will transition out of here tomorrow, and it will be a new incident management team. So some new names on the information being presented. Mike McCauley will be presenting on these calls most likely going forward, taking over for me. As mentioned, Mike will do a fantastic job and has a lot of experience in complex incidents like this. So happy to have someone taking over from me that is a very good information officer. So I guess just other high level things, we're continuing to see somewhat diminished fire behavior today, but it's getting to the point in terms of weather where we're seeing some warmer temperatures on the horizon, some increase in wind. So expecting there to be some increase in fire behavior as we move forward. We've had a number of instances this summer, given drought conditions, where rain will have much less of an impact than we might normally expect it to. So we will have a short-term diminishment in fire behavior as we have seen in the last few days. But with how dry things are, as temperatures heat up and the wind increases, likely to see an increase in that fire behavior. Again, just it's very dry and the fire burned very deep into the ground in some areas. So that activity can pick up given any wind or temperature increases. We do have heavy equipment operators working in the Magna Bay area, in Celesta Magna Bay, working on some heavy equipment lines that have been worked on over the past number of days. So they're in there trying to finish those up. And then we've had helicopter operations working kind of in the entire area, aerial operations happening in all the areas on the fire that need it in terms of bucket support. So water delivery to areas that would have increased activity. Our crews remain focused today in Turtle Valley, Locum Bear Creek area, so the Locum Valley, and then Little Shuswap is where our ground crews are focused today, working on a lot of same objectives of just limiting that fire spread where it is and has the potential to move on. So I guess actually that's a good prompt. I will share my screen for where those places I'm talking about are. I'm going to use same thing as I did yesterday, a little bit less exciting in terms of helicopter activity right now. But we're still doing stuff there. Okay, so you guys should be able to see my dispatch screen. So I'll just quickly reiterate where we're focusing on. We've had helicopter kind of overflights of the fire as well as Rossmore Lake. So I'm sure people have seen helis flying around all the way from the north end to the south, to the east, to the west, all over. Very important we utilize those helicopters today and tomorrow to do those operations. So likely some movement there. And again, helicopter bucketing operations into the afternoon if we see an uptick in fire behavior. So the places that I mentioned, crews working, I have less layers on just so it's a little bit less confusing. Crews working down in this area where my cursor north of Little Shuswap Lake. They're connecting some guard from a road that is kind of servicing properties in Little Shuswap Lake area on the northern side of it up to the Locan Bear Creek Road to kind of limit any further spread west and as well down south to these property line areas. That's kind of our one area of focus as well, where my cursor is over here in the Turtle Valley area. We have guard completed, and I'm just gonna pan down so I don't have to look oddly down. So we have guard completed. If you basically, this is Highway 1 kind of running somewhere here. I don't have it turned on, but from the Little Shuswap Lake down around this western side, there is a guard complete in Turtle Valley, and crews are working on kind of the start of connecting it up and around with the eventual goal of getting it basically wrapped from the Sorrento side up to the Turtle Valley side, and trying to limit any further spread in any direction, obviously down into Turtle Valley or down this other valley here towards Salmon Arm or east towards Sorrento. So those are our main operational activities today. I'm going to stop sharing and obviously can stay on the line if we have any questions.
Forrest, thank you very much. Do appreciate your update. And Sorrento, we've heard from folks in Sorrento. They were just wondering what the latest is in that area. Do you have any information you can share with us specific to Sorrento?
Yeah, we will. It's one of those areas that was just access was kind of impacted by some circumstances last night. So again, looking to, as now that seems to be resolving, we will be back finishing that line that I had talked about. We did a couple days ago have some increased fire behavior. Sorrento Fire Department assisted us and we had IA crews, but since then we've been just really working on focusing in some guard construction as I was describing, essentially just on the perimeter that exists. So if you look at the public dashboard, that wildland fire perimeter into the Sorrento area, just connecting the guard that is constructed in the Turtle Valley side all the way around. Yesterday, we were thinking there'd be about 2 days left of completion before that guard was completed. So it's good work that's being done there. And as soon as we are able to sort of resume completely normal operations there, that's the kind of timeline is about 2 days. But not seeing any, from what I have been told at least, not seeing any significant or concerning fire behavior. And we are, regardless of where ground crews are, we do have our full helicopter operations going. So those bucketing helicopters are available and working the entire fire. And as well, just there's a ton of reconnaissance flights happening. You might hear people calling them recce flights. That's happening all over the fire. So lots of eyes on the fire right now as we're passing all that information over to the next team. Heli flights are happening with those people watching those areas. So lots of overhead view happening on the fire right now. So that's what I have for the Sorrento area.
Okay, thank you, Forrest. So just remind people who are watching now that we have Tracy Hughes with us. She is with the CSRD Emergency Operations Center, and also she's information section like myself, and then Derek Sutherland is the EOC director, and he'll both will be providing an update in just a moment. But we'd like to get to our Q&A session with the media. So any media members watching, if you'd like to hit the hands up button, we will bring you in for a question, whether you have a question for the panel here or for Forrest Tower. And Forrest, if I'm not mistaken, you are transitioning out tomorrow around noonish, so this will be the last briefing we have from you. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. It'll be Mike McCulley almost certain tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to global news. Soren Jensen. Soren, go ahead, please.
Thank you. This is a question for Forrest. I'm going to ask about the possibility of collaboration between BC wildfire crews and groups of citizens who are behind the fire lines. A lot of professional forestry people, loggers who are there, who are working to fight the fires and are eager to collaborate. What if anything, the status of that organization or any talks to work together?
That's ongoing as of meetings that are happening this morning and happening throughout the day. So as our kind of recent updates, we're still working towards that. Just, everyone's working towards the same goal there, trying to put out the fire. Lots of skilled individuals there, just need a little bit of organization, and that's what we're still working towards right now. So that's actively ongoing with BC Wildfire.
Excellent. For a follow-up, I guess I have a question, I think probably for Tracy or maybe for Derek. Supplies getting through the police checkpoints, are the supplies being delivered by barge or by truck to anyone other than BC wildfire crews in St. Ives, Anglemont, places like that?
I can help with that. Yeah, we've been working this morning in conjunction with the RCMP to get supplies over to that area. We have hired a barge, and we are barging supplies into the North Shuswap. And of course, we have the forestry road through the North Fork that is available to us to get those supplies into. Obviously we prefer to go in on the road. It's just not safe to do that right now. So we are having to get creative and find other solutions.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go to our next call in just a moment. We did have a comment I'm actually monitoring now on YouTube. There's about a 45-second delay, and someone had asked about Scotch Creek. And Forrest, I'll leave that with you. We'll come back to that one. But if there's any new information you have on that particular region, let's go to BF Connect, which I believe is Barbara. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Farklow with the South Shuswap Scoop. And I'd like to know if the section of highway between Sorrento and Chase that is currently closed would be made available for evacuation only purposes should any further evacuation notices be issued.
Do you have any information on that, Derek?
Yeah, I can help. The RCMP have informed us that they will prioritize escorting any vehicles through closed roadways for evacuation purposes. Nobody wants anybody to stay in an area that's unsafe.
All right, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, any special considerations for Tappan area currently under evacuation notice for the local former dump where the current transfer station is in Skamikan?
That's something you can speak to, Derek?
Yeah. We are actively discussing with Wildfire whether or not we can, or we're constantly assessing whether or not we can reduce those orders down to alerts. And we're just not quite there yet, but we're looking at it every single day. Our goal is to get people back into their homes as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe to do so.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go to Randy Adams in just a moment. I just want to mention I did have a chance to speak with the RCMP earlier because there was a call that came in where someone was asking about an area that isn't currently on evacuation order and what plans are in place if there is some sort of a tactical evacuation or if it goes to an evacuation order. Certainly RCMP will be available to help escort people out, provide evacuation routes and that type of thing. So the key right now for anyone who is in this region or any region that could be impacted by a wildfire is situational awareness, to follow the local sources, bcwildfire.ca, and of course, local government, csrd.bc.ca in this case. And I have spoken to some evacuees today and people are wondering about getting information. And while the media has been really helpful in providing information, it is important to go to the source directly. So the local websites that we just mentioned, well, the CSRD, but of course, BC Wildfire, any new information, once it's confirmed, will be up there almost immediately. So that's an important option. Of course, if you don't have access to the internet, you can call the Emergency Operations Center at 250-833-3350. Let's go to Randy.
And Eric, sorry, I just wanted to butt in a little bit, but we also have the alertable mass notification system. So as far as any alerts or orders going out, those will be going out on that system. You do have to register for that system, and you can do that through our website. It's proven to be a very popular service. It's going to come directly to you. Some people think that that service is only if you have a cell phone, but there are other options like text, email, and also a voice call, which would go direct to your landline and alert you that there is something happening with an order or alert.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. That's really important. If you haven't signed up for that, you should do so, and you can do that on the CSRD website. Let's go to Randy Adams. Go ahead, Randy.
Hello, this is Randy from CBC Kelowna. The question I wanted to ask, and I'm sure it'll come in this update that you will be providing, either Tracy or Derek. In terms of structural loss, I know that it was mentioned yesterday that these numbers could potentially be coming out either yesterday afternoon or later in the day or today. Do we know how many numbers at this point yet in the communities at this point? What's been lost?
I just want to clarify, I don't think there was any time set on that, and certainly it's underway, but Derek, maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, so right before I came into this briefing, I had a conversation with our representative from Canada Task Force 1 who are doing our rapid damage assessment, and they weren't quite finished yet. So once those numbers are compiled, we do expect them to be finished by the end of the day. Then we'll be compiling those numbers and planning for a release and notification to the affected individuals.
All right, Randy, follow up.
Yeah, I wanted to, I'm going to be this guy at this point. And this is for Forrest. In terms of the post that was posted last night, how come it was deleted and not revised? Because it caused a lot of issues online in terms of people thinking it was fake. So I'm just wondering, how come it was deleted and not revised?
Yeah, so we made that post based on information received from RCMP and other partners. Kind of simultaneously as we posted it, we received information from RCMP that the situation we were describing was not as serious in the moment. And so deleting it was, the choice was made in an effort to not give something steam that didn't and doesn't deserve to have it. And so we know the power of social media in terms of making something bigger than it might be. So just based on advice from the RCMP and just having more information provided to us, that was the decision made to remove that post.
All right, thank you very much, Randy, and thank you, Forrest. And it's important to note too that throughout all of this, this particular wildfire, there have been a lot of reports on social media, comments on social media. And one thing that at the EOC we've been talking a lot about is some of those items, while they're important and while they can be a bit of a distraction as well, the community has really come together. And that's something that I've seen. I don't live in this community. I've come here to help out, like many other people, including the RCMP and some volunteers. And we've seen the community come together, not just in the EOC, but throughout this entire area. And that's really what has stood out for me, including on social media. I want to mention quickly before we go to Victor that we are, I'm trying to monitor these comments on YouTube as they do come in. And there's a couple specific comments for us about fire in certain areas. I think when we wrap up, maybe you can just give us one final thought on how current this information is that people will see on the wildfire map, because that's really where they should go to get the details. Maybe you can even mention that now. It's really, as soon as you confirm the details, it's on the map, right? As far as the size and scope of this fire.
Yes, yeah, I can give a very quick rundown on how that works. So every change to our perimeter is from a human getting data. And that can be someone in a truck with a GPS on, someone in a helicopter with a GPS on, or someone interpreting a high-level thermal scan or satellite imagery. So at every step, no matter what, there's no automatic process of it. Someone has to either do it themselves or verify it. Once that's done and it's verified data, it goes on to our GIS team. So the mapping people that process that information, they will make a map. That data then goes to our dispatch program. That's an internal program we use to monitor safety of everyone. As soon as it's updated there, it gets pushed out to our public map within 5 minutes. It's a real-time push out of data. and then basically people just have to refresh the page. So there's no delay in terms of us having data before it goes out. It's just sometimes it takes time because a human has to do it at every step of the level.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Let's go to more questions. Victor, go ahead, please.
Hi there. Just hoping you can hear me. Thanks for doing this as always the last few days. Was just, not to dwell too much on the circumstances, I guess, as Forrest mentioned yesterday. We heard from the Wildfire Service, heard from RCMP, but I'm not sure if the CSRD has anything to kind of add to what might have happened, because from what we could see, a number of people involved may not have necessarily been North Shuswap residents, because I know some from Kamloops were just there to do whatever it is they were hoping. So I don't know if the CSRD has any kind of statement to what happened last night.
Yeah, not necessarily a formal statement, but I can tell you that I've been talking with North Shuswap residents that maybe don't agree with everything we've done in this emergency, but have stated adamantly that they are not supportive of this Freedom Convoy that was coming to the area, and we're not a part of it. And they very adamantly wanted to express that to the EOC. So at no point did I ever think that this was our residence. I think there's a element out there that grabs onto these certain things, and I think that's what this was.
Okay, Victor, did you have a quick follow-up?
I did, yes. I'm just curious. I know people in places like Anglemont and St. Ives, they're not on order, but they've been essentially cut off without power for going on a week right now. I don't know if you have any kind of information as to how many people might have left, how many people are still in those communities that have not been told to leave, but, some may have, some may have not. So I'm just looking for some clarity in that part of the North Shuswap.
Yeah. So we don't have numbers per se. We have offered supports to those people that are in that affected area. If they want to evacuate, we will give them regular ESS supports as we would somebody in an evacuated area. And we applied to the province for special permission to do that, and they were very quick to grant that. So I appreciate the support we were getting from the province in supporting these residents. And those residents that have chosen to stay, they remain. The option to leave still remains with them. Anytime they want to come out, they're more than welcome to, and we will support them. We have been trying to support them sheltering in place as well and staying at home. And we have been bringing out supplies and getting some bins and freezer trucks out there for spoiled food in their fridges and freezers, because we know that's an issue.
Derek, I'd like to mention as well, I did talk to a couple of evacuees today from Anglemont, and they told me that there is a firefighter in the area who's still there, and the homeowners offered for that firefighter to go in and take out the food that was remaining in their fridge that was still good, to donate it to people who are in that area. And that couple said that they were really supportive of what was going on, and they were appreciative that ESS support was made available. And they highlighted for me the challenge that a lot of people are facing. These folks don't know when they can get back home, but they appreciate the urgency of the fact that the road in is under an evacuation order for safety. Let's go back to our media calls. Marcella Bernardo, go ahead, please.
I'm going to try to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Can't hear you very well. Double check your audio there.
Can you hear me at all?
Hear me at all? Hear me at all? Hear me at all? Hear me at all? Hear me at all? But we can't hear you. I'm going to ask you to hold on just 1 sec. We're going to have to figure that out, but I'm going to go to another question, then we'll try to come back here. We're not really sure what that issue is. Not internal here, I don't believe, but we do have another hand. It's a phone number without a name. So we're going to go to phone number without a name. If you can go ahead, please. It's a looks like a 587 number, and I'm assuming it's a member of the media. We're kind of flying blind here, but go ahead, please, if you're following along. No go there. That's why it's good to put your name in if you can. I know it's a phone number dial in, but if you are hearing me, last 2 digits, 711.
Yep. Hi, can you guys hear
Perfect. Me? Yep. Who are you?
Great. Hi, I'm Carrie Tate with the Globe and Mail,
Awesome.
the member of the media phone number. I'm wondering, sorry, if you guys can clarify a little bit, again, back to the social media post. Did BC Wildfire Service pull fire crews out of the North Shuswap area last night? And was it because or related to the protest?
Well, I believe Forrest has already addressed that. Forrest, is there anything else you want to say on that, or are we going to move on? What would you like to do?
Yes, and I would just like to clarify that, yes, crews were reassigned temporarily. They're still working on the fire, and it was not only related to that. There were a number of considerations made and continue to be, folded into our decisions going forward.
Okay, follow up.
Was it partially related to that? Did it put firefighters in danger at all?
I would just say that any environment which seems to have had some remarks made and the situation that was happening, that was part of the consideration, not the entire consideration. But, as I've said, we continue to work off operation information that's provided to us when we're making our decisions of where we put our people. And safety is going to be number one thing we're working on with our wildfire staff, as well as everyone else in the area. So again, it's not a decision that is, something that's forever going forward. We often make operational decisions based on changing fire conditions, et cetera. So related to, but again, not the cause.
Okay, thank you so much. And we're going to try Marcella one more time, see if that's going to work, and otherwise we'll have to move on. We're going to try Marcella. Hope I'm saying your name right.
All right, let's try this.
Any kind of sound on in the background, or if you're hearing this, that could be part of the problem.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, that's what I've done.
That's pretty intense. You know what you can do if you'd like? It's a 45-second delay, but you can put a comment in the YouTube chat and we'll try and get it on. I see Barbara's got one more question. Barbara, did you want to ask Forrest or the panel another question?
Yes, thank you very much. It's Barbara Farkle from the South Shuswap Scoop. With regards to referring to the situational awareness that you're commenting on previously, many of the businesses that are near the fire area, some of them are open and offering services still, and it's quite variable for many of them. Do you have information through emergency support services that they can register whether their services are available or not? Can residents find that information there? And sort of second to that, is there business support through emergency support services? That's two questions in one.
That's something you can help with there?
Sure can. So yeah, the businesses can reach out to our ESS line if they're not currently registered as a supplier with ESS and get registered. And that number is 250-833-3360. That's 3360. They certainly can. They may already be suppliers. And I'm sorry, what was your second question, Barb?
It's essentially whether the businesses can also get support for themselves through emergency support services.
Yeah, not directly through us, Barb, but certainly there are agencies that support businesses in these emergencies, and we can get them in touch with them if they want to if they want to contact us.
And also,
that's great. Thank you.
Any homeowner or property owner who lives in the area who is under an evacuation order, who have to leave the area, of course, can sign up with emergency support services. And if your property is on evacuation alert, you can sign up in advance just in case the alert changes to an order, and that is ess.gov.bc.ca. That's ess.gov.bc.ca. The phone number for ESS, if you have questions specific to how you can get support, 250-833-3360. That's 833-3360. Randy Adams has a follow-up question. Randy, go ahead, please.
Hi, this is actually Justin McElroy from CBC, asking a question on behalf of Marcella, saying she was hoping to ask Derek if he feels, and I know you expressed sentiment similar to this, that last night's protest backfired with local residents because they didn't want to be associated with the protesters who came in. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yeah, I certainly can't speak for the community. I can speak to the community members that I spoke to, and they were They were adamant, those ones that reached out or that I was speaking to on another matter made a point of saying that they weren't associated with it and they wanted nothing to do with it.
Do you have a follow-up?
Nope, that's all she typed to me. So
okay.
You're listening to an update from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District, updating on situations there from the Bush Creek East fire. They are expecting some higher temperatures and more wind and more wildfire behavior today. We're going to take you not far from that area with a reporter on the scene, but right now, here's a news update.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. No one has been arrested following a confrontation at a wildfire checkpoint in the Sorrento area last night. The RCMP say officers on site were able to de-escalate the situation and no charges are anticipated. Tensions have run high in parts of the North Shuswap as people trying to make supply runs to evacuation zones have been turned away. Police say most of the people who showed up last night were not from the area. In Kelowna, officials say crews are making solid progress with the wildfire nearby. The city's fire chief says conditions should allow people to start returning home as early as tonight. He says the fire in the area is held, but there are still some challenges at the perimeter. The city says people will be notified neighborhood by neighborhood as evacuation orders are either lifted or replaced with alerts. And the provincial government says it's giving $15 million to Food Banks BC to help people struggling with the high cost of living. The organization says food banks are seeing greater demand for their services than ever before in their entire 40-year history. Poverty Reduction Minister Sheila Malcolmson says the latest funding will also support rapid access to food during emergencies. Now, back to BC Today with your hosts, Dan Burritt and Belle Puri.
Thank you very much, Tim. We just heard in the news headlines about an RCMP checkpoint in Sorrento and some issues around that. Our CBC News reporter, Chad Pawson, is in Sorrento and on the line now. Hi, Chad.
Hi, Belle. Hi, Dan.
What do you see at the scene right now?
Yeah, well, we're just traveling away from it as we got a file to make here. But anyways, we were at the checkpoint for a good period of time there. And of course, it's got a bunch of RCMP vehicles there and other bigger vehicles blocking the way. And what really struck me about it today, Belle, is there's just so many vehicles that are still approaching that checkpoint. And I guess what's happening is even though there's lots of information out there online, in the news, on official sites saying this closure has been in effect for a number of days, there's still people who don't know that. So we saw a great number of transport trucks that rolled up thinking they were able to get through on Highway 1 to continue on their, commercial travel, having to do these massive turns on this tiny strip of highway to get around and to go out. So officials there, RCMP there, saying, this stretch of highway is still closed, and they're mostly now dealing with people who are still arriving and not heeding the closure. They're also talking about people who are tourists who are in the area, and one RCMP officer told us that a couple arrived saying, well, yeah, we did see on Google Maps that the road was red and it was closed, but we decided to come up and check anyways.
Oh my gosh.
So they're really wanting people to heed the closure and to make sure they know about it. Now, as opposed to last night, of course, not a lot going on there today related to the convoy that approached there last night. Of course, that's been in the news all day. We've heard lots on your show and on CBC, on all our platforms about what happened there. We did manage to speak to some people who live nearby. There's actually a community right above the highway, right at that closure, and people there did hear the convoy last night and did witness some of the people there. Most of the sentiment we're hearing from people local is that they didn't appreciate the convoy. They've since learned that most of the people in the convoy we're hearing aren't from the area, so they're disappointed that people from outside the area would try to get through the convoy. They think that that's obstructing official responses. And of course, in the last few days, we've heard that there's better communication between people who are remaining in those North Shuswap communities with the official response, so they're encouraged by that. They think the convoy is maybe a bit of a setback to that. And also people were disappointed that maybe the wildfire response had to be pulled back slightly because of this convoy and any potential safety measures. So mostly disdain and people just not impressed with this convoy, even though they realize that people need help on the North Shuswap, but this wasn't the right way to go about it.
Chad, speaking of people that you spoke with who live nearby, Danielle and Rita Shoemaker live on Highway 1 at the Sorrento Blind Bay closure. They were not impressed with the evening convoy trying to get supplies to the North Shuswap. We have some audio of your interview. Let's listen to that.
I could understand if it was people from that community, but if you're not from that community, stay out.
Yeah.
You have no right being over there unless, you know, even if you're traveling. If you see the sign that says that it's closed, why try to go through it? I could understand if it was...
Chad, similar sentiments to other people that you heard there?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we didn't get on-camera interviews with everybody, but there's many people who spoke to us while we were in the area or at a commercial center. And there's this ongoing sentiment that they're just frustrated and flabbergasted that a group of people, 20 people, a couple dozen people showed up wanting to get through, and just feeling like that just set efforts back here to try to cope with what's going on the other side of this barricade and getting supplies in. And as I said, this what seems to be an improved dialogue between official responders and locals.
It does seem a bit perplexing that, you mentioned the transport trucks and that they don't know that this road is closed. Generally, though, any feeling on how this is expected to unfold in the coming days?
Yeah, I think I didn't get the sense from anyone we spoke to that this was going to happen again or that there was another instance of something like this happening. I think generally people are feeling somewhat better because of the rain. There's a lot of people who've talked about the rain that's come down here, and the ground is quite wet around Sorrento here. It's still quite smoky here, a lot smokier than in Kamloops, where we began our day today. But people are encouraged that it has been raining, that there seems to be better cooperation between people who have left behind and the official response. And they're just really looking forward to getting back to their lives. The shoemaker couple that we just heard from, who we spoke with, they actually work at the hardware store just on the other side of the barricade. So they're not working right now. Thankfully, their employer is continuing to pay them, but they're just ready for more so that they can get back to work and get back to doing the things that they want to do. And we've heard that all week from people now who have been out of their homes for coming up to a week. Of course, they're doing the best they can, but they're just really ready to get back to their lives.
I think a lot of people are probably in that situation. Thanks for the update, Chad.
Nice to talk to you guys. Thank you.
That's CBC News reporter Chad Pawson. He is in Sorrento near the RCMP checkpoint. And you can see Chad's coverage tonight on the 6 o'clock news on television.
That's right, as well as 11. And he's up there with our colleagues John Hernandez and others who have been doing a lot of work and a lot of long days like many people have. Let's shift to the forecast. Changes are coming. Let's find out more and how they will impact the wildfire and smoke situations around BC. The hardest working man in show business, Darius Madavi, CBC News climate and science specialist. We're turning to your expertise once again, sir. Thanks for joining us. Let's start at the weather outlook. What's the situation now?
First of all, Dan, you flatter me. Thank you. The forecast is it hasn't changed much. We're already seeing those winds that we talked about earlier by Kelowna, right? The higher elevation you go, though, the calmer those winds are, which is somewhat good news in terms of the fire. So down at the Kelowna airport, they've been logging wind gusts blowing from the north at around 30 kilometers per hour, gusting close to 50, but at higher elevations, you'd expect those to be closer to 20. Similar story up in the Thompson around the Shuswap. Those winds aren't blowing higher than 20 kilometers per hour at most. So a bit of good news there. The winds will continue to settle. I would expect them to be even calmer over the next few days. Temperatures still climbing, so we're going to hit the mid-30s in a lot of places in the southern interior by the weekend. By Monday, we'll see those temperatures continue, and then on Tuesday into the middle of next week, they are expected to come down, which is when we start to see the possibility of that rain. So new system comes in, temperatures come down, humidity comes up, rain very possible.
And obviously, again, that's something that we are watching for already, though, of course, you were here, Chad. We were speaking to him. He said Sorrento, it's wet.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so there is still there are some pockets of rain that are still popping up through parts of the province. I don't think that's going to last. Heading into the weekend, we're going to see very dry conditions return. I will say that there's always a possibility that when we have these really hot days, we see some convective activity. So the hot air rises, we see some instability. It generates generally a thunderstorm that can bring rain in addition to lightning. But depending on how dry it is, the drier it is, the less likely you'll see that rain in addition to those thunderstorms. So I expect dry conditions for sure heading into the weekend.
And that's what Forrest Tower was saying as well in the update from the Shuswap, that, sort of everything's be changing over the next few days. Temperatures will heat up and winds will increase.
Yes.
Let's talk about Metro Vancouver. It seems every morning, you get up, you open the door and take a whiff. One day it's clear, one day it's not. It was smelly again this morning.
A bit, yes. It does seem like the smoke will be returning. Expect that to also linger into next week. I think at the moment it seems like our peak smoke activity will be over the weekend, which is especially unfortunate before things start to clear out heading into, again, mid next week. So conditions will stay fairly consistent with temperatures slowly climbing, some winds popping up in different places, very much depending on where you are. Hard to predict exactly where those will happen, and the humidity dropping heading into in the interior. So here in Vancouver, we'll see not as sticky as it was during our heat wave last week, but a little bit of humidity. And then as we head into next week, Tuesday is the day all that really changes. Temperatures come way back down, and we get rain, probably here in Vancouver as well. But right now it looks like it'll be overnight. But again, it's very far out, so that is very much up in the air.
And that's hard to forecast.
Yes, extremely. So smoke forecasting is one of the more difficult things, but I would say expect smoke to linger. Hard to say when the peak will be, but into next week, when we see the rain possible and the temperatures come down, that's when we get a system that could push some of the smoke back out of the area. But that's the only time I would expect to see things really change. But we can always cross our fingers and hope that the smoke ends up just a little bit further away from the city.
When you say more rain and lower temperatures, what are we talking about? What are the numbers?
We're talking, so in places like the southern interior, we're talking temperatures dropping back below seasonal into the low 20s once again. Here in Vancouver, we're talking pretty similar to where we were earlier this week when we were hoping for rain. Got some, probably around the 19 to 21 range. But the big place will be the southern interior. Seeing those temperatures come down will be excellent news, especially because the relative humidity will be increasing as well.
All right. Darius Mahdavi, CBC Climate and Science Specialist. We always appreciate your analysis, and we'll see you tonight at CBC Vancouver News at 6 on video and TV, as well as at 11 o'clock. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
And just before, Belle, forgive the interruption, we had a suggestion from one of our colleagues who wanted us to repeat an emergency number that's been given out by a number of the emergency officials. So for those of you who have been listening in, and we appreciate it, got some feedback that some folks, and unfortunately we can't control it all, have been speaking a bit fast when it comes to giving out numbers. So for those of you who need, for example, need to get services from the government if you're displaced, etc., there's a website you can go to. It is ess.gov.bc.ca. That's ess.gov.bc.ca. I'll give the emergency number as well that we got from Eric Thompson with the Columbia Shuswap Regional District. That number is 250-833-3360. One more time, 250-833-3360. We know there's a lot of information coming very fast across the airwaves and video and television, so we appreciate you giving us the feedback and making sure that we can get it as best as we can to you.
And to that end of all that information that's out there and trying to consolidate it, and so much focus on wildfires on key parts of the province, we decided to get the big picture from Donna McPherson, spokesperson for the BC Wildfire Service.
Well, since April 1st of this year, we've had 1,902 wildfires that have burned about 1.75 million hectares of land in BC. And there's currently about 374 of them that are active across the province. Our crews were able to utilize the rain where it did fall in the province. It gives them the opportunity to move a little bit closer to the fire because the fire is much less active if it's in an area that has some precipitation and some higher relative humidity. So that's good news for the crews. In the long term, what unfortunately we're seeing is a warming and drying trend that's going to be starting fairly quickly. So we'll see a rebound in temperatures, hopefully not as high as we saw before, and also dryness of the air as well. And that is concerning because that deep drought that we have in the province isn't going to go away without some pretty significant precipitation. So it's possible for that drought to start impacting the fires in the province as well.
That's Donna McPherson from the BC Wildfire Service. We asked what the service is seeing in the weather forecast.
Our forecasters look out about a week and a half. And as we mentioned, it looks like we're going to be going back into a warming and drying trend. There is a slight chance of some kind of precipitation out, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks out. But right now, we don't know how much and where it may land. As last year, it's very possible the wildfires will continue late into the fall. Last year, they were burning right into October, and some of them burned even longer than that. So we are concerned. We certainly are in it for the long haul. The one benefit that we do have in the fall is that the days are getting shorter, which means that the opportunity that the sun has to heat the ground is lessened over the course of the day. So that does help as well.
Now, BC has been getting a lot of help fighting fires, including from other countries. Donna McPherson was asked what more we can expect.
We do have some confirmed resources coming in from Mexico, South Africa, and Australia in the next week or so, which we're really looking forward to their help. And right now, we've got about 3,500 personnel working on wildfire response in the province.
And actually, we did hear in the update from the Shuswap that 100 Mexican firefighters are scheduled to arrive tomorrow. Now, the Canadian Armed Forces has been busy with wildfires in the Northwest Territory, so it's not clear when or if they will return to BC. The Wildfire Service also had an update on transportation.
So Highway 1 does remain closed as a result of the hazards from the Kukupee fire. Wildfire Service is continuing to work with our partners in the Ministry of Transportation and BC Hydro to assess these hazards before creating a plan to reopen the highway. Also, wildfire conditions and visibility is improving in the Grouse complex of fires, and that's in the Okanagan Valley. So we have air operations that are more free to work in that area. In the Prince George Fire Center, there is an area restriction that was implemented for the Big Creek wildfire located south of the Amica arm of Williston Lake.
That's Donna McPherson, spokesperson for the BC Wildfire Service.
Lots to think about there. The harrowing wildfire season has left winemakers in the Okanagan growing increasingly worried. While they say smoke taint isn't expected to be an issue for this vintage, they're seeing the profound effects of climate change on their farms.
Wine is not just alcohol. Wine speaks of a piece of land. There's so much variety, there's so much interest from tourism and from the world of wine in what we do here because it is such a diverse environment to grow grapes and to make wine. We can make all sorts of different things up and down the valley. Although you look out behind me and there's a full vineyard out there, it's a little bit of an Easter egg hunt for grapes at the moment because we all suffered pretty catastrophic winter damage.
We have been seeing the effects of climate change, whether it's a freeze event, whether it's an atmospheric river, whether it's a heat dome, or now what we're seeing today, fires, is really indicative of climate change and how it's impacting our wineries and grape growers.
The smoke
sitting in the vineyard certainly isn't a positive. You know, we've been dealing with this for a while now. There's lots of research going on at different universities around the world. The AWRI, Australian Wine Research Institute, has done a lot of work on smoke and smoke mitigation, when it's caused, how it's caused, and then how to deal with it. And it looks like this year, you know, we might need to use some of those techniques.
The smoke is impacting the industry probably more directly in keeping tourists away. We've had smoke for a number of years, and people just are starting to expect it, and they're planning, or probably not planning, to come to the Okanagan because of it.
We really encourage people to come back in the fall. We're looking at a really nice fall from what the long-term forecast says. So once the smoke is cleared, then it's going to be a beautiful September, October, we believe, and a wonderful place to come back and visit us. As a wine industry are going to need that support. Buying local is more important than ever as a tourism destination once you're able.
Some perspective from the winery industry, which we know has been hit hard not only by climate change and the impact on their land, on the grapes, on the vines, but also with the closures. Now, some of those closures, as we've talked about, Belle, have been lifted for the Okanagan region, except for West Kelowna. It's still closed. They do not want people visiting there right now, but it certainly has an impact on. And this is the high season. This is when people come and visit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
There are places that, you know, people do visit, and I don't know, maybe you've been there as well, but Kangaroo Creek Farm in Kelowna is a popular stop for families. And of course now, like so many tourist spots, it has closed its doors as it faces the threat of fire and the aftermath of that. Staff are now walking the perimeter, you know, keeping an eye out for how the situation is unfolding, all while trying to keep the animals calm.
We wanted to be responsible, not attract people to our business. We're taking a huge hit. We basically have 70 days out of the year where we make most of the income that sustains us through the rest of the year. So to lose what will probably account for, in the end, several weeks of being down in high season is pretty devastating. We have over 50 kangaroos, but if you were to count absolutely everything else as well, we have well over 100 animals here. We have all their crates on standby. We have a trailer hooked up to a vehicle in our parking lot. Our staff has been incredible. They were up all night last night working in shifts, just walking the perimeter, making sure that no burning debris came down. They actually had to put out, I think, one flaming plastic bag and some smoldering bark that must have come from a very long ways away. We're pretty calm. We think we're as prepared as we could possibly be. The animals are all comfortable. The ones that are very sensitive to smoke, like the parrots, they've been removed already from that situation. And we have enough staff who are familiar with our evacuation plan that I think we could execute it very quickly. We know we're not going to open tomorrow, and we know that we probably won't be opening for several more days at least after that. What we're hoping for is that things cool off and it rains significantly. But what the chances are of that, who knows?
That's officials at the Kangaroo Farm in Kelowna. It's the Kangaroo Creek Farm, and it's quite a popular stop for families.
No kidding. And another reminder for anybody who's listening, and I have to give credit to our great Kathy Brown, who's been reminding us of the importance of getting out these numbers to everybody who may not be able to write them down as quickly, etc. For anybody who's listening, and we appreciate the calls and the emails and the contact you've had with us. If you're in a fire zone where you have limited bandwidth, this has been emphasized up in the Northwest Territories, but wherever you are in this great big province and country, and you're having trouble with your phone, if you're down on batteries or bandwidth, you can always go to cbc.ca/light. If you go to that website now, it does not it does not include pictures, etc. And what that will do is make sure that you can get the information you need without draining your battery very much. So that's another option for you to go to. And I think we're just going to jump back into a quick update from earlier today around. Let's just have a look from the
Central Okanagan.
From the Central Okanagan Regional District. Let's go to that.
This is operational period number 16 for us. I'd like to start by expressing again my sympathy to all of those who have lost in this event. I understand yesterday was a very difficult day, but I'm here to provide as much information as I can and let all of you who are out there wondering behind the scenes on some of our operations. An incident of this scale, there's no undo button. This is just not going to go away. It's only through hard work and perseverance on all of our parts that we're going to get through this thing, and we are. Just like we said, the evacuation order rescinds are continuing. There'll be more to come today and more in the future days. The weather right now is in our favor, although we're always anticipating that may change.
Weather in our favor, but it could change, so that leaves us on alert.
No kidding. And that is our show for today. Our thanks to everyone who called and emailed and joined our discussion over these past few days. To those of you forced to leave your homes or fighting wildfires near you, thank you for your time, your service, and in some very difficult circumstances. To let you know, BC Today will be back to 1 hour tomorrow from noon to 1 across our province, but we will be ready to expand our coverage as the wildfire situations change.
And we're hoping that, everything stays stable. A huge thank you to our team across the province, everyone who helped put this show together. Very much appreciated. Coming up next, it is All Points West with host Jason D'Souza, and you can watch our coverage on CBC TV. For Dan Burritt, I'm Belle Puri. Have a good day.